Right, we are going to be here for the first episode of Summoning Insight in 2025. Although I won't say what yet, Monty, but there will be a potentially seismic shift coming to Summoning Insight, which, by the way, if that alarms you, listen, I don't know how it's going to play out, so maybe that should alarm you. Who knows? I'm not here to control you. I'm just here to do my thing. So anyway, it started out the same, though. It's just me and Monty again talking about esports. Don't worry, we're going to hit like Riot, annoying regional fans. We're going to rank teams, which means we're going to be wrong about every single thing, but to each individual person. You know, the Apostle Paul, Monty, said, I am all things to all men. We're like that, but we're just wrong in a different way to every person who watches the show. It's actually an amazing feature of the show. I used to think it was a bug. It's a feature. It's actually it's why you're also watching 10 plus years later. Because, by the way, we are now entering, it's not too far away, it's like 3 months from the 11th year of Summoning Insight.
That's right. I mean, look, there were some questionable calls in the past about Odoamne teams in LEC prior to the season beginning, but that's just it, guys. So, you know, it's fun to review the expectations that we have for these players versus the reality.
And plus, it gives you receipts to make fun of us. It is just me who did it. I'll fully admit, the last 2 years, I have picked every completely like bespoke, not even core, every custom-made super team. I picked them all to win the LEC. I picked the Ottawa, the XL1, Vitality. The fucking Vitality super team, all of them. I even, this is how bad it is, Monty. I even tempered it last year by only picking like Carmine Cops, I think be like my second best team or something. Like, I've gone so badly. So I have to say that I'm actually really glad, Monty, that G2's changed their lineup, because now I'm actually not a total idiot if I now pick a random one like that. And now I don't have the obvious one I should have just gone into. So it's okay. It's all good. I'm always willing to take the chance. Although I will say, actually, by the way, that is something I have learned. I'll bring this up to you as an abstract point to begin the show, which is one thing actually in Counter-Strike. We're all having a massive discussion about this last year, because what we've discovered is CS2 is actually subtly different to CSGO. And so what happened is a couple of people made teams, which in CSGO would have been mega. Like CSGO was more about like fill the roles in the team out and have like, I always used to say, even though people think of a game like Counter-Strike, they think it must be all about skills and headshots. Actually, I always said in Counter-Strike, it's more about the strategy and team play. So it's more like you just have to have a threshold of mechanics and aiming ability. So basically, the point I'm getting to is, in the past, when people made all these teams, we had these guidelines from like 10 plus years of CS that made sense to how you build squads. Well, one of the things we've all discovered, I think is actually very, very relevant to League of Legends, because in League of Legends, you have to change rosters almost every year, is actually now most people, and I've sort of come along with them, have come to the conclusion now that though I've just referenced that approach, the idea that you're going to do the fantasy football approach and go, I'm going to take him from here and him from, basically doesn't work, Monty. Like, it's actually the exception when that approach, like building a completely piecemeal from whole cloth team from the beginning up, all 5 different players, I actually think that is the hardest project to possibly make work. By the way, no matter who the players are, Monty, because loads of these super teams look great. If you don't know, in Counter-Strike, Team Liquid had like a super team at the end of 2023 going into 2024. It looked mega. It was all players from the heroic lineups and twists from FaZe and fucking, it looked mega, mate. It just completely failed. And by default, in general, they fail. Whereas what we've learned, essentially, I'm sure League fans will be able to relate to this, is actually what you want to do is you want to look for the team where you trust the core of the team, like 3 players, let's say, and then it's more like the additions make sense, like either that's a side grade or it's an upgrade or something. They're actually the teams you should bank on more. It's more like if you sat in the abstract world of on paper, the roster can look amazing with the super. But actually, I have to say, it doesn't seem like those super teams like that tend to work as often, actually. Seems like, because if you think about it, right, what you don't know in that scenario is do they have any basis to how they'll play? Will the roles work? Is there any comms? Is there a shot call? Like, these are actually all the things people think are secondary, because we're all still thinking about just skill, but they're actually somewhat primary to making teams now, it seems like.
Sure. And also, I think with the GM, you do have to understand how players like each other, because a lot of esports, whether it's Counter-Strike or League of Legends, even though some of these games like Counter-Strike have been going on for 20 years, players are still really immature. And
sure,
because there's only 5 players on a starting roster in CS or LoL, like one bad relationship can fuck up the entire team. Whereas,
yes,
team sports, you can have a lot more people. Therefore, if people don't like each other, you can kind of just never interact if you're on a much larger roster in a team-based game. But honestly, like, the pros' ability to just get the fuck over it is kind of incredible. And so they will just like self-sabotage. And the only way to know that is basically by being a GM who understands the intricacies of the scene. And the other issue is that there are regions that hamper this more or less than others. Obviously, one of the big problems with LEC teams is that those contracts are basically guaranteed by German law. And so, you can basically be a shitter, get benched, and still get paid. It's the same thing that happened when I was in Overwatch League, where the contracts were fully guaranteed. So there were actually instances of players benching themselves in Overwatch League and basically saying, "No, I'm not going to play anymore," and they still got paid, which is completely outrageous.
It's a completely different game, Monty. Like 6 years later, it was the guy from Envy, people don't know, the Dallas Fuel or whatever. It was that Korean player. What was it? What was the player's called? The one with like C or something.
Effect.
What was his name? Effect, there you go. It was a mega Korean player for Dallas Fuel, Monty's thinking of, but we used to always have to keep that secret. It's just, surely everyone in Overwatch really knows who it is, Monty. It's not really a big, I know you would just say it doesn't matter.
There were lots. To be fair,
there was others
lots
as well,
of
true. But that was the famous one I was thinking of, Monty, because that's the one where he also just like literally removed himself from LA and went back to Korea like during the season. And I was like, you still want to get paid for this? You're not even in the fucking continent, mate. Like, that was a wild one, mate. That was a wild one. And that was all, by the way, people don't know, just on personal stupid shit of like, like the environment or something about the league. By the way, you are right about that. Like, by the way, I'll obviously get into this in my content when I reveal these things. Almost every one of the super teams, Monty, is also literally what you're saying. They almost never actually fail. And behind the scenes, you talk to someone and they go, yeah, that guy actually turns out he was shit. They almost always just go stuff like, oh, I didn't know this person doesn't talk, or he has, the wrong shot calls. It's nearly always actually like fucking stuff that, again, isn't in the server. You couldn't see it with your eye when they were in their old team. So I think you're right.
Also just fixable shit a lot of the time, too.
Yeah, true.
And it really is the players being incredibly stubborn a lot of the time, or the coaching slash management not being able to help them develop comms or figure out how to grow as players. That's been a big issue as well. Although coaching obviously has increased in quality dramatically over the years. Speaking of childish behavior, though, there was something super funny that happened while we were on our break, which is more Marc Merrill shenanigans over at Riot. Thorin, this guy is just such a fucking disaster when he opens his mouth publicly.
Is his status in Riot the degree to which he really is like the actual boss, and there's no one above him ever just calls him in an office and says, what are you doing? Because, by the way he tweets is like he is Elon Musk or something, man. He can just do whatever he wants. Like, I'm actually kind of amazed, because I would have thought by now, just for his own like self-preservation, just don't tweet, mate. You know what I mean? Just don't make public comments. Like, you can't really lose if you don't. But every time he does this, he always like wades into the minefield, doesn't he? I don't know why.
So he is now the chief product officer. So for those of you keeping up with the Marc Merrill timeline, he was never the CEO. He used to be the president of the company.
Right.
And then when the shit hit the fan with the $100 million lawsuit, where the California state government found that they had basically systematically abused every female employee that had ever worked there, he gave a very tearful speech, despite the fact that, I want to make this very clear, Marc Merrill is the one responsible for Riot's culture. He loves cults. He's into all these really bizarre charities, one of which is called City Year. You guys can look it up. When he was caught basically being elo boosted in the early days of League of Legends, which would get you banned, he, as a punishment, donated $10,000 to the charity City Year that he was on the board of, which is complete nonsense, obviously.
Which I will say, though, in real life is horrific, Monty. But in comedy world, that is like when George Costanza in Seinfeld had the thing where he gave everyone Christmas cards that their present was a donation to the Human Fund, and it was an imaginary charity he'd set up to not give people presents. So in a fucked up way, Monty, because that sounds like a George Costanza scam, that's the one part of that horrible story I sort of fuck with, even though it is mental. Because think about it, you not only violate a core rule of your game, which, as you mentioned, by the way, Monty, isn't even just for casuals. If you were a pro, you would get punished for that, just like people like Double get punished for poaching themselves, if you remember, shit like that. So you absolutely would. And not only that, you not only get caught doing like essentially a cardinal sin in League of Legends, you then turn around and then try to scam people on the donations. Like, bro, just fucking take the L already. Just take an L. I love it. It's so scandalous, though.
So when he had this tearful address to the company of Riot, apologizing for all the horrible shit he had done, and again, he was responsible for this culture. In fact, he was the one who said Riot is a culture first company and we hire for culture. So famously, this means that everybody has to go through like 12 different interviews with people a lot of times that you will not even be working with in other departments than the job you are actually applying for. And if any of them veto you for not being a culture fit, then you do not get the job at Riot Games.
Cough, D-man, cough. Oh, sorry, I have a bit of a cold at the moment.
So obviously this has been famous for a long time. It clearly leads to extreme groupthink, fear of, espousing other ideas or beliefs. It has caused a lot of problems. It was one of the primary drivers of the culture that California found problematic and fined them $100 million for. So what happened is they disappeared him for a little bit. So he couldn't be president anymore, but he was still like kicking around the building, and now he has reemerged as the chief product officer. So what he does is he's the one actually looking after all of the products. So whether it's Arcane or whether it's, their new games that they have in development or League of Legends. So he's much more focused on the quality of the things that Riot is putting out. So that's where he is right now. He is not the CEO. He is not the president, but he is still part of the C-suite. Now, why is he back after doing all of these things? Probably because he knows where all the skeletons are buried, because he's not actually, a necessary part of this company. But again, I want to reiterate that what he is saying is that he has a quality bar. And this is what a lot of the stuff he's been saying publicly is that, he's there to ensure the quality of Riot Games. And he's still obviously very, very, attached to the Riot culture. So what happened is he actually, and again, why does he post on Reddit? Why does he go on Tyler1's stream, which is exactly what he did? So he goes on Tyler1's stream.
As a general rule, if you're actually a professional, like a C-suite executive at any esports company, just don't ever post on Reddit, and I've just saved you half your scandals. Think about like the famous Lena one where she's rushed to like call out, same thing. Mate, it never works. It doesn't work. It's such a bad strategy, I know.
Just don't. So he, for whatever reason, is on voice comms in Tyler1's stream while Tyler1 isn't even playing League of Legends.
Mental that is, Monty. Tyler1 was their poster boy for toxicity in the game. Why is Marc Merrill on his stream all these years later? What are we doing? What is this?
But he wasn't
dumb if he says, you must be polishing your nails. It's like, he's a heathen. Get him out. Kill him. Kill the witch. Kill the witch.
Meanwhile, Marc Merrill's posting on Reddit. Dom should feel lucky that
Twitter,
we made this free game for him to. Oh, it was on Twitter.
Yes.
It was on Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was actually a tweet to him, I believe. I think it was actually right to him, but that's the best part. Yeah,
telling Dom that he's lucky that he made a free game for Dom to make a living off of.
I love it.
So. Anyway, the
funny thing is anti-PR. That's like the worst. That's but if you don't know, I'll give you a reference, Monty, you'll appreciate it. If people don't know, the real reason they actually had to fire Idra from Evil Geniuses back in the day was nothing to do with all the things people didn't like about him. It wasn't that, like, for example, he was like overrated as a player and would lose often, or he'd have tantrums in the game. If you remember, Monty, he only got fired because he went out of his way on teamliquid.net forum to tell someone, I get paid to treat you like shit and it's awesome, or something mental. And because essentially all you've done there was like zero upside. All you've done is just say it essentially like, hey, all my sponsors, I'm just pissing in our own customer's face. Like, you think, what's the upside to that, mate? You have to get fired. So again, same scenario. Like, what's the upside of doing any of this stuff, mate? Like, I think sadly, Monty, he thinks what he's actually doing is the opposite. He thinks he's being like down with the kids and like what a man of the people. And he's like being transparent and like sort of letting us know what's going on. But he doesn't know that isn't how it comes across. He comes across like Lord Farquaad from fucking Shrek, like, you little peasants, you should be glad I gave you like this mental, mate. He doesn't know how he's coming off at all, mate. It's mad, isn't it? It's mad.
So the funny thing is on this Tyler1 stream, Tyler1 isn't even playing League of Legends. He's playing WoW Classic, which is very funny. Why is Marc Merrill there?
See, another detail, back in 2014, do you remember, on Gamers, we had a story where the Riot Games planned to make it a part of the LCS contracts that you could only play League of Legends on stream. Marc Merrill, flash forward 12 years later, is on someone else's stream while they're playing World of Warcraft passive. What even is this? What is this world, mate? It's too bad.
So as if that wasn't funny enough, so you might be wondering, why is he there? Well, sure, we all are. He then starts talking about Riot internal stuff, including saying, and this is true, that they had to, quote, annihilate, unquote, the League of Legends team, as in the development team, because the leadership had calcified. They had shitty leadership that had calcified, is effectively the thrust of what he was saying to Tyler1 on Tyler One's stream with presumably tens of thousands of people
watching.
What
was the context, by the way? Like, in what response was he saying? Like, why was he explaining this detail? Do you know what the context was?
It was kind of out of the blue. But I mean, like, why?
The reason I find that even a weird statement on its face value is, if anything, I think League got stuck like in the middle period. If you go to, I don't know, 2007 or something like that, was when it was all like, it had sort of become like super calcified as a game. It was all like the tracker's knife and just the fucking wards. Or the game was just the same every time. I think actually the last few years, especially the last few, Monty, have been some of the best years of League. Like actually the champion balance has been awesome. The national tournaments are dope now. Even though like the band format works way better. That's why I find it weird. That's why I'm asking, like, why would he call this out? Like, because I assume since it's Tyler One, it's something like Tyler One always complains the game shit or something. I don't know what the context would be, but it feels like a weird time to come out against the game development. It's actually, isn't League pretty good now, guys? I think it's almost at its peak, isn't it?
I mean, I think people will probably complain about some of the changes that are made this season because it's making the game more opaque to have more objectives on the map.
I'll give you that.
It is very confusing, some of the changes that they've made to the upcoming season. But in general, I agree with you, and I think the game has been going in a good direction. But apparently Marc Merrill doesn't agree, and he's the chief product officer, so he was unhappy with the way. But he literally just did call the League of Legends development team leadership, like, bad. I mean,
that's an obvious question, Monty. If he called them chief, if he is the chief product officer or head of product, what was the title? Is it chief product officer?
Chief product officer, CPO.
Then logically, even if it's not his fault, it is his responsibility what the team does with the product. Therefore, surely within this is why I think it's so bad to be trying this like halfway straddling. I'm just a guy in a bar talking, hey, we're just guys, we can talk. Or like, I'm official like GPO. Because he's fallen between the two there, Monty. Like the worst part about that is, bro, if this was a PR thing, the first thing you do is go, and of course I hold some of the burdens. I'm responsible for that. Why is it sounded like he's going, it was them bloody idiots in the back. Don't you hire an anti with their boss? Like, no, look, it was them doing it. It's like, you're the one in charge of it all, mate. That's why I don't get about this angle. Well, surely he should be blaming himself too.
It's also that to reiterate, he created the Riot culture that was culture first, not get the best people. It was get the people who agree with you. And then he's suddenly surprised that the leadership would be shitty and calcify when effectively he turned everybody into one giant circle jerk.
Oh, to be fair, he does on Reddit, if you go down on Reddit, he does on Reddit do what I just said, basically. He does say, like, that he takes the responsibility or whatever, but he's obviously doing that
somebody else wrote that.
In response to, and also, almost certainly he didn't write all that himself. Someone else just made that way better than the shit he would say as he saw on the stream. Yeah, true.
I mean, but the fact that he's just out there continuously making unnecessary and stupid tweets, I would love to know why it's important for him to go on Tyler One's stream and say that they are annihilating the League of Legends leadership because they were shitty and calcified. I would love to know what the upside of that is for Riot as a company, or why it's necessary to go out there and say it. If you are unhappy with the product of League of Legends, surely you just say nothing and then you improve it and then it gets better and everybody claps, right? You don't just go out and throw your own employees under the bus, because what are all the people who work at Riot or who work on League of Legends thinking in this instance? It's wild. And everybody is already on tenterhooks working at Riot because there have been massive layoffs. Obviously, we know that not being a culture fit is the fastest way to get fired, even though that could literally just mean having a different idea or disagreeing with somebody else about the best way to do things. Because if that person
politics or something in the wrong type and all, all sorts
of shit, for sure. I mean, this is it's shocking. That this continues. And, this isn't a one-off thing. Marc Merrill has been doing this for like 10 years at this point in time. So can nobody stop him? Why is he in this position if he's doing this? Why can't he just take away the keys to his social media?
Because in theory, I should have this title. But I you know what? I give the title up. I actually willingly bequeath the fucking Excalibur to Marc Merrill. Marc Merrill is the Kanye West of esports, mate. Because it's like there's no upside to any of these tweets, but it's like, why is he accessing Twitter still? What is going on? Why? Because it is like, I have always had the same feeling with Kanye and Monty. If you notice, it's not like all of his dramas come out of something that was happening already. It's like he just gets bored every few months, and every few months he just has to do something and like sort of start shit or something. Marc Merrill feels the same way. It feels like there's like a 6-month internal clock, and every 6 months he has to just make some grand proclamation or some weird interview comment. Because by the way, haven't you noticed also, Monty, this fits a trend. The last couple of years, Riot has done this thing, which I don't get at all, Monty, because normally companies are the opposite. Like if someone wants an analogy, if you've ever known about the history of the company Apple that made all the computers. Famously, one of the reasons why they actually fired Steve Jobs is Steve Jobs was always about the future and the next product. So he wanted the Macintosh computer, like the IBM type, multimedia thing to be the future. Whereas at the time, the Apple II was mega, mega successful. And so the Apple people were like, no, let's just service the Apple II. Like, we'll expand slowly into the next thing. Whereas his whole shit was like, fuck that, that's the past. Like, essentially, by the way, in the long run, he was right. Things like iPods and phones it was the future. It wasn't to stay with the old thing. But normally, you expect people, when they have a very successful product, to go out of their way to maintain that. The last 2 or 3 years of Riot Games in League of Legends, Monty, is them constantly signaling sort of like League is the past, almost like, hey, we've got new games coming, and have you tried Valorant? And hey, check this out. And what about, it's like, you've already got the #1 game. Like, what? This is such a weird, like, again, it's like anti-PR. I don't get it, mate. It's anti-marketing.
I mean, now they're just introducing gotcha mechanics. And I think the questionable thing that they've done, and they did it again today. So they released a cinematic for the Noxus release made by Fortiche, the same studio.
I'm the only
Arcane.
person who had this thought, Monty. But everyone else was just enjoying it. Do you know my first thought I had was, and you're the only person, Richard, if he was here, would get the reference too, is, bro, the opening of that cinematic is literally like the fucking Eyes Wide Shut, but masked balls they're having. All I'm going to say, Riot, is you aren't beating the allegations, bro. I wouldn't even though only I'll get that reference, I wouldn't even have hinted that. Tell you what, Marc Merrill, I know where you came up with the idea for that sort of party, mate. The difference is it wasn't fucking, wasn't like, I don't know, pick a random person. It wasn't Aphelios under that mask. It was some fucking senator, wasn't it, Mark, when you were there? Hey? I don't even remember, what was the word, like Princilio or something? Like the fucking code word you had to say to get into the house, Silencio or whatever, or some shit like that. Anyway, that is what I thought, because everyone was glazing that cinematic, obviously.
I mean, it's good. It's way better than a lot of their other cinematics have been, and obviously Fortiche making it, them building off of the end of Arcane, because there's references to that. And I thought the Vladimir LeBlanc scene at the end was interesting. But the thing about it is that Mark has been out there running the PR for Arcane. It's like the article comes out, Riot spends $250 million on Arcane. He's like, so what? We just did it for our players. Well, Mark, here's the thing. You can absolutely do that. I'm not going to stop you guys from spending $250 million to make some amazing animation. That's totally cool. Everybody gets to enjoy that. But there literally was no plan in the first season of Arcane to onboard players into League of Legends. Did you make a new tutorial? No. Did you release a new game? No, you did not. The game is hard to get into, and it's harder now because of the changes you made with this Noxus season and the new objectives and all of the changes. And you, by the way,
are you shocked at that as well? I really thought they'd go the other way, but he'd be mega cynical. I thought every few weeks there'd be like a skin related to it coming out, and so the idea would get you all in the game. They didn't even do that. I'm actually shocked.
What they did was release that like gotcha mechanic, like Jinx skin, where you basically just slot machine it, and then if you have enough slot machine pulls, basically you're guaranteed to get it. If you spend $250 or whatever it is. But this has been, they haven't had anything really that would say, okay, here's our funnel for using Arcane to either a new game within the League of Legends universe, because remember the MMO is delayed forever now, or we have a new tutorial system for new players who want to try League of Legends after watching Arcane. And Thorin, they had 3 years to make this. So, Mark is just out there being like, well, sure is cool that we spent all this money making something awesome because we love our players. And it's like, no, you have a massive fail because your marketing unit, which includes Arcane, because it is marketing, you are losing money on this, utterly failed to integrate with the League of Legends team. And maybe that's what he's talking about on the Tyler One stream. Maybe that's one of the factors that he thought was bad about the League of Legends leadership, was that they were not prepared when they had 3 years after the initial wave of Arcane between season 1 and season 2 to get something out. But let's not pretend that Arcane was some sort of marketing masterclass, because it was a dead end that didn't go anywhere. And it could be the best thing in the world, and it was good, but it has to actually do something. And, you know,
that's even an area where the community was fucking terrible, Monty. Because if you ever saw the Reddit threads about those articles saying what the show cost and how, by the way, there were even articles, Monty, where the journalist said explicitly in the article, this includes the cost of marketing and all the other things they were. No, that just means if a market, essentially they proved, Monty, that it was just a massive waste of money. But the premise goes, because people like the show, they just refuse to accept it. In their brain, it's like, no, but, and it's like, no, yeah, listen, I could pay $1 billion and make something awesome as well, but it doesn't make a good business though, does it? You might love the movie, yeah, of course, but it doesn't mean the show's bad. We're not talking about that. What Monty's making the point of here is, you essentially had the hit fucking anime of last year and didn't even parlay it into your incredibly successful game, which you're trying to give like a last sort of gasp of life at this point in time. So that is a fail, of course.
They didn't have the new engine, which, as I said on this show, they were showing off internally. That's not ready to go. That was part of the whole promise from the League of Legends team that 2025 will change League of Legends forever. Not really any spectacular changes.
Yeah.
Not any spectacular changes that we've seen. And so here we are. And I think like it's cool that you guys won some Emmys. But the thing is, and like winning awards and making a great show when you have infinity money to lose, it just isn't impressive. It's just not impressive. And that's the whole thing about why people in Hollywood think Riot is hilarious, is that they're just throwing money around and they're not actually playing the business game. And they could say, well, this is increasing brand equity, and in the future, the League of Legends brand is going to be worth more. So when we do release the MMO or whatever, the new engine, people are going to want to try it. And that might be true. You know, there probably is truth to that. But this is definitely not the best way that this could have happened. And pretending it is ridiculous.
What my other favorite thing is, Riot has managed to find yet another field they are virgins in. This is one of the few times that's actually reasonable. They're actually virgins in this field, Monty. And are you ready? They've done exactly the same capitulation of what they did before, which is make all the same mistakes because they refuse to learn the field. Because think about this. And here's another thing, Monty. Do you know one of the things that, as someone from the UK, was actually always frustrating to me about watching American television, like prestige television even, is that I quickly learned, now I know why the end of the seasons are always so weak. Like they always hint at something amazing. They have a little drip of it, but then they have to stop. And then what's weird is I didn't know at the time because I didn't understand the mechanics. I used to think you wouldn't end like that. You'd never end a film that way. And it's because, you know this, the actual business of television is you can never actually know most times at the end of the season if you have another season. So you have to leave the ending. So it could be the ending if you get cancelled, or it could be the springboard for next season. But it has to be vague enough. It can be both, right? Normally, essentially, Monty, they will milk every other show. Like every good show, if it's good in one or two, whether it's stuff like Rick and Morty's a great example, eventually if it gets the right amount of interest and money behind it, they'll just greenlight it forever, mate. They'll make 500 episodes. They'll do 12 seasons. The idea also that you shit out this anime and it immediately, you get 10 out of 10 reviews with it. People are saying this is the best anime they've ever seen. So what do you do immediately once you hit the zenith of popularity? Yeah, that's the end of that, though, guys. There'll be no more of that. We're going to do a different one, though, but we won't be doing more. Yeah. Why would you go back to that well, mate? Like, these people just kill golden geese, mate. I don't get Riot Games. They're the weirdest company of all time, mate. They just keep tripping over. Like, what's this? Like a fucking gem or something? Nah, throw that in the ocean. Like, what are you doing? It's so. I would have thought they'd do like 10 seasons of Arcane or something. I would tell them, don't worry, it's coming straight back. Season 3, get ready. I'd be all over that shit.
It's also very clear that.
Well, I guess you're not the joke of money, but yeah.
It's also very clear that League of Legends basically just on life support for whales at this point in time because they've changed the monetization system. Like basically the enshittification of League of Legends is complete, where now it's just like gotcha gambling mechanics, spending $500 on a fake or RE skin. This is the slow slide into the ocean. League will be around for many years and the esport will be around for many years, but they are in kind of like the terminal stage of game monetization right now. And there's not going to be like coming back from this, and it's bad for the players. I do want to talk about one other thing that happened this past week, which is funny, which is that the United States designated Tencent as a Chinese military company.
Now, you know why that's wonderful, Monty. Because remember what they all say, it's not just the Saudis. It's also when we reference China, me, you, or Richard Lewis. What does the dickhead what about guy always do? He goes, would you say this if like there was an American or UK tournament and that was being run? It's like, let me know when a fucking UK or American company is labeled as like an actual military fucking adjunct, you idiot. Like, it doesn't exist. That would be so beyond the pale, it'd be bonkers, Monty. But as you say, what was always essentially known, this is just obvious, is you can't be as huge a company in China as Tencent and really just be like, we're just freewheeling, do whatever we want here, guys. Like, that's not the world you live in, bro. What are you talking about?
They're a publicly traded company, but they do have to have like party members of the Chinese government on their board. And, you know, they've said they're going to fight this. And to be clear, there is nothing that happens by the U.S. designating Tencent a Chinese military company. But it is basically one step closer to what's going on with TikTok right now, which is that they're, you know, if the Supreme Court doesn't do anything in like the next 2 weeks, they're just going to be banned in America, and they're trying to force a sale to an American company. This is one step closer to Riot kind of being in the same boat, because there's clearly going to be problems with Tencent owning Riot collecting U.S. citizens' data, and then who knows what the Chinese government is doing with that. I would also say that when you have Vanguard, a kernel level access into people's computers, that maybe having a company that's owned by a Chinese conglomerate that has ties, mandatory ties to the Communist Party of China, may not be the safest thing for the United States, security. So,
I mean, by the way, Monty, that's not even just like a reach. Like, you're not writing a fictional Tom Clancy novel in your head. Literally, people have been found at all levels in the US companies and government to be actual, literal Chinese spies, like actual people who moved here or second or third generation, and they have the family ties. By the way, I'll tell you a random one I saw the other day. You know, the stories, these don't tend to be broadcast on the 6 o'clock news, Monty. They tend to just be like, page 11 story. There are stories, if you ever look them up, where in major Western cities, like this will be like in LA and New York and stuff, mate, there's been things where they found undercover CCP members who were running like unofficial Chinese police stations in American cities only for Chinese citizens. Like, if people don't know, like there is essentially like an information Cold War between China and the US and other parts of the West. So this isn't even just some minor thing. I agree with you. Nothing actually will come from this. Like, it's not like they are going to ban it like TikTok. Like, but they're clearly building up the impetus to do that if that happens. Like, essentially, if TikTok goes, they'll probably in one fell swoop take all these things. And we've already addressed this in the past. That's why the Saudi angle comes in again, because the point then, if you're Tencent is, you don't really just, it's like TikTok, you don't really just not operate in the US. You like sell part of it to some US company, you get around it, or you have a shell company, or in this case, you get the Saudis to take it off your hands or something. When we say the Saudis, if people don't know, that just makes sense for everyone. It makes sense for the Saudis, it makes sense for Riot, it makes sense for Tencent. So I could see that being plausible. Because that's the thing about the military angle is you probably should be checking if any Tencent people like come to the US and are involved with the company in that way. Like, again, unfortunately, they could be a spy, my friend. That's just the world we live in. By the way, I'll just say for any idiot who doesn't know, I've no doubt the other way around, there's also like American spies in China, etc. But that's irrelevant to this topic. Just saying, just so people are aware, we're not under the impression there are no spies from the West.
Of course there are. But I do think that the Saudi angle becomes more likely, because if the TikTok ban goes through, all of a sudden Tencent has an asset that might be in jeopardy. And so that's when it becomes, potentially a better opportunity for Tencent to sell it off before they have some sort of forced sell-off down the road, which could result in less money. So there's a lot of angles here that I think are interesting, but nothing immediately is going to happen. And also, just because they're designated a military company, it just kind of sets them up for potential future sanctions or scrutiny. It doesn't actually change anything right now.
It is, though, Monty, as I alluded to, though, absolutely delicious if you are someone who's had to put up with the shit we said earlier of the whataboutism, where when you point out that essentially, if you were in League of Legends, remember that post, Monty, but roughly over a year ago, that's aged so poorly it's almost impossible, where the Redditor congratulated League of Legends as a community in the game for not embracing Saudi money because of their regime. The whole time for the last, 6, 7, 8 years, you've been owned by the Chinese government, you cretin. So that means everything the Chinese government does that you think's fucked up is attached to League of Legends esports. esports in a way that, by the way, outside of ESL isn't even the case in Counter-Strike, you morons. Like, Blast isn't involved with them. Like, that's why it's so mad people do that weird thing, which I'll never understand, which is, why do you... I understand why people call out fucked up companies, but why do they pick a company they don't even know and act like it's their mate, but he's the good guy? It's like, they're all fucking good. They're giant video game companies. What good guy? This is the fucking company. And also, by the way, they're all, as we say, they're all full of gacha mechanics. They're not really the best people in the world, are they? Like, hey kids, want to play this slot machine? I mean, gacha thing? Like, give me a break.
It's terrible.
God.
I do want to...
fuck.
On our typical hit list, we have to go through Evil Geniuses as well, because Evil Geniuses had a fabulous rollout on December 22nd, which is that, I know you guys were waiting for this, Evil Geniuses now has a mascot. Which is, I have no idea why they spent money making this thing, but it's even funnier, Thorin, because the Evil Geniuses sidekick is called Mish, and they posted this tweet that says, "Hello, I'm Mish, they, them pronouns. Meet Mish, an imaginative artist, helpful strategist, and unpredictable ball of energy. Mischievous and moody, they are known for joyful outbursts filled with pranks, games, and spending time with friends. Yet they can also be reclusive, retreating to their evil lair for stretches of creativity, be that painting or plotting master plans to stay one step ahead of our competition. The perfect sidekick to any villain, Mish is your partner in crime and loyal duo." Who is this for, Thorin? How does this help the Evil Geniuses brand? It is mind-blowing. And I'll tell you a fun fact, Thorin. So I looked at this, and
everything about this is so stupid, man. Like, even by the way, this is where I even know, like, part of this is like almost part of the feature at the bog, Monty. If I dare to mention the pronouns, I'm in trouble, aren't I? Because it means except I'm not, Monty, because this isn't an actual person who exists. This is literally an imaginary character that you imagined, and then the second thing you did after imagining them into existence was imagine they don't identify with the gender binary in a totally imaginary. Again, like, you're making this problem up. Like, we're not the weirdos for mentioning that. You're the weirdo for putting it in there, mate. Because even though you might say, to appeal to people like that, why? In what way would that be a thing you're doing? Because, by the way, it also inferred, the people in the chat are right. It's also inferred to me they might even, because they tried. This looks like this looks like a fucking marketing company made this, Monty. It was not somebody EG made this, in my opinion. Because this looks like you went right. They, them pronouns. That's the pronouns crowd. Wait a minute. Sort of an animal, furries. It looks like you're actually doing some mad cynical checkbox.
Funny that you mentioned furries, Thorin. So I Googled the name Mish, okay? And the first hit, when you Google the name Mish, is a furry porn artist.
Fucking hell. What the fuck is this?
It's like, they didn't even Google the name that they were putting out there. So when people would search for it just comes up.
What you mean is this is on the Dignitas level then, Monty?
Yes.
It's on the Dignitas
So it
level,
literally...
right?
I do not recommend you do this, guys. I didn't know, but you know, so it's your fault if you do.
Don't search it and then put images tab on Google, I'm guessing. Is that the mistake? Is it all like... Because you know the other thing as well, Monty, it's one thing when people just draw themselves as like a fox. You know what? Do whatever you want. But when they draw and it's just cartoon porn and they've got all dicks out and that, I'm like, what even is this? What are we doing right now? First of all, even a straight person drawing cartoon porn's a bit weird, mate. Like, you know what I mean? Like, even that's weird normally, in it, like, you know.
So it was actually like, it's like the first result too.
Right.
So brilliant. It's not like you have to scroll down. Like if they had literally for 1 second Googled this, it would have just come up with drawn furry porn. Which I thought was hilarious.
Exactly the same spelling everywhere on Instagram, on his fucking, oh my God, what?
Thorin's now looking at furry porn live on our show.
Oh, fuck.
So yeah, it is very, very, very funny. Also, they keep going through the Twitter, and it's like Misha's favorite food.
I've got a question for you. Am I the only one as well who thinks this doesn't even work as branding? Because here's what I don't get, Monty. I'll give you a quick story. You know what? statute of limitations has passed. It's all good, Monty. No one can get us now. When me and Monty did Flashpoint, we had to learn a lot of very harsh lessons about how stupid the corporate world is that we just had to put up with because it's the way things are done. So one of them was we had to have a logo designed for us by like a real world design company. And now I'm telling you, by the way, give me a rough ballpark. Wasn't it something like 50K or something we paid for this money? It was like a big amount of money, right? Because remember, they're not just designing it. At that point, what they're doing is giving you like loads of options and running through all the content.
Yeah, we were doing branding exercises, and if you guys have worked in product, you know that logos, branding packages, colors, everything like that. Style guides. These things are very expensive from top-notch brands.
But I don't say that part as the gag. The gag isn't the 50K price, because by the way, it probably was a whole team of like 8 people working on this shit for weeks.
It was more than 50K.
Doing all stuff.
It was probably 1 to 200.
Yeah. Remember, even what they present to us, like the 10 things to pick from, they've probably gone through hundreds to do that. So I'm not actually making fun of the cost, but what I will make fun of is this, Monty. The actual process, though, was infuriating because, for example, you remember this, one of the ones that we did end up picking as the Flashpoint logo, if people have ever seen, is one where on the I of the Flashpoint part, or on AA maybe, the A I think it was, one of the letters, essentially, what ended up being the logo, I said in this call, like, we should use this one, because if you look at like the top of the A or whatever the letter was, it looks like
it's A and the I underneath it, yeah.
It looks like a flashbang going off and we're Flashpoint. And this is not a joke, guys. Someone in this call just goes, "What's a flashbang?" And I remember, I didn't sit in the meeting because I'm different now. I just messaged Monty in a DM like, "Bro, we are paying them 50K. They don't even know what Counter-Strike is. Like, what is this?" So similarly, here's why I think this is a mega marketing fail, Monty. This is like someone did this last minute, because think about the company, right? Evil geniuses, right? If I was to make a little devil or an imp, I've nailed it for the evil part. But that doesn't work for the geniuses part, mate. Like, no one thinks of the devil as an evil genius. You know what I mean? Like, evil geniuses is like a fucking villain or something, or a bad guy. Why would it be a devil? Like, that feels like you just did the evil part. Like, one thing I don't get is this whole thing they're trying to do in the modern day of like really play out, because they did it with the last regime, the whole evil angle, but they're trying to do it like playfully, like, we're just silly and fake evil though. It's like, they're never nailing that tone somehow. What they think they're doing it like this image here, like it's just going to be fun and playful. I feel like they never do. This just comes off as like a bad kids TV character or something. You know what I mean? It's not even cool, mate. Like, it's not even cool.
It also goes down, and it's like personality, friendly but moody, likes helping others, enjoys pranks. Misha's likes painting, calligraphy, helping Potter record strats. Misha's favorite person in the whole wide world, Potter. Why can't we just promote Potter, the coach of your Valorant team, your world championship coach? Why do we have to make this fucking weird mascot to promote Potter? It just seems very backwards as to what you're trying to do here. Anyway, do the Zoomers like this? Because to me, it's just incredibly cringe. And also probably cost tens of thousands.
Were people vibing with it? Were people vibing?
No.
Oh, you're right. There's so many. If you keep scrolling, it never ends, mate. There's just like a million images, isn't there? What is this shit?
It just keeps going with favorite foods, favorite people, favorite colors. It just goes on and on forever.
What is this? I don't know, mate. Whatever.
But yeah, I just don't understand the purpose of this, especially with an org with the reputation that they've got. It's just
one of the first,
so transparently horrible.
First replies on Reddit did make me laugh though, Monty, because this guy's right. Think how many images are in that tweet thread, Monty. There's like Mish, the image, like classified. Someone at the end, he didn't even say this is a diss, Monty, but it almost sounds like what I would say sarcastically. The guy just goes, "Can we see Mish in an EG jersey?" He isn't in an EG jersey on a single one. He hasn't got a logo on him or anything. Why isn't that? Like what? Surely the one thing you'd have is him in the fucking outfit, mate. You know, like the fucking NFL jersey or something. If you're a mascot, surely at least to get that. He is right. Whoever said that, whoever naively asked that, you nailed it with your question. That is right. He's not he's not in an EG shirt, mate.
Also, truly, when I think about the brand legacy of EG, I think about cute cartoon mascots. Like, they have no idea what their own fucking brand is. It's absolutely wild. You could have had a mascot. Just bring back Idra and have him talk some shit. There's your mascot. We don't have to have a cartoon. You can just use Potter. You can just promote Potter. If that's who you want to promote.
I also just don't get what we got. Like, listen, Monty, I understand I am the fucking Omega Boomer. I am the last real man from the 20th century that exists in this fucked up apocalyptic world where you're all Zoomers in a simulacrum of not even experiencing real reality, just what you think is real reality. But even I, Monty, appreciate the idea that when you make a fictional character, it has to be interesting. Like, not only why am I into this character? Like, I understand the concept of a mascot, by the way. That's a good idea to brand yourself in a certain way, have a certain image to go along with the words and the name. But I don't get, like, what am I supposed to do with this lore, Monty? Like, there's an image that goes, Misha's favourite food, right? It better at least be something, Monty, where there's going to be a gag. Like, here's the example. I'm already going to show you how I'm going to do a better job than EG themselves. Because when they put Misha's favourite food, they actually act like this is a real character and I need to know his real answer. So they go, camembert cheese. Like, why? Like, that would be cool, Monty, if what it was like, he likes cheese because he likes, cheeky upfront strategies in the game. So he likes that kind of like a spicy, but a little bit of a flavor to that would be an angle. This is just like random things. Like, by the way, he likes camembert cheese and lychee popping boba. It's like,
what is popping boba?
I don't even know, mate. Okay. Popping boba sounds like some sort of fucking porn thing someone does on an OnlyFans, mate. So there you go.
Boba's just drinks for people who aren't old enough to get cocktails yet. So I don't know what popping boba is. I just drink it old fashioned. Why would I go spend $10 on that?
Here's where again I am the Omega Boomer, Monty. Do you want to know the wackest reason ever why I'm not a big fan of boba tea? You're gonna love this because you have to know old school British culture to know why. It's because I find it weird in a drink to have that sort of tapioca thing. Because you'll know this in England as a boy, I have real tapioca. That's your dessert. That's like it's like a rice pudding.
Yeah.
Thing. It's lovely, but I find it weird to have those in a drink though. Like I'm trying to drink. What the fuck's this shit? Get that out of my mouth. And those balls are way too big as well. I won't say any more because now I could be clipped out of fucking context. So I'll just leave it there. What else? Leave it right there and say no more. Let's continue. Anyway, all you need to know is Misha's favourite foods include camembert cheese. By the way, I'm just going to throw this out there. If you were to be in public as a human, one of the most obnoxious foods you could ever eat would be camembert cheese at a fucking picnic. Do you know how badly that's going to smell or stink up the whole area? So already I hate Mish. You know what? I've only just met him. He's not even real. I don't really even know what gender or identity he has because he's near them, but I already hate me. There you go. And it's camembert cheese and it's popping boba. This is just garbage, mate. What is this? Also, I'm with you. The weirdest thing about this is it does look like it's supposed to appeal to kids. That's what I don't get. This looks like something on Cartoon Network or something.
And if you look up Mish, it just leads you to porn. So, which is weird because, like you say, there might be kids like searching for this. It's too good. It's too good. But yeah, that is. I thought it was fantastic. I'm glad. I don't know if you saw this when it was released, Thorin.
I didn't. I just saw it now.
That's fabulous. I'm glad I could ambush you.
My mistake. I need to actually follow the EG account. I've realised I've made a mistake over the years. I've changed all this money. I've actually now started to appreciate the hate followers. You know what? I'm hate following them right now. I'm in EG. It's all good. We're there. We're all good. We're all good.
How are you else going to quote retweet them and make fun of them? All right. So shall we talk about some actual League of Legends? We did promise that we were going to do our kind of predictions for each of the major regions. Not LTA South. We don't know anything about that, guys. Like, no. We don't know about that. So
and I'm sorry, in the modern day, it is just irrelevant at this point in time. That's just true. That's just true, guys.
I mean, it won't be irrelevant when all the Brazilians watch the LTA North versus South and them getting absolutely popped in the playoffs. But until that point.
You know, the saddest thing of all is low-key, that is also one of the number one things I just pray for. I just want whoever the LTA South team who plays in that playoff match to just beat the Northern team, just go for this shit fest it's going to cause me. Especially because I also understand that a lot of these fans in League don't actually know what it's like when Brazilians go fucking ham on Twitter, mate, and they're about to find out. Like, I just need that match to be like, Team Liquid against whoever, some Brazilian team, and then the Brazilian team to get an upset in like close fashion. Oh, it'll be a meltdown you haven't even experienced. What region do you want to start with then? Which one do you want to start with?
So I do think we can start with Korea, probably because it's just going to be the easiest one to kind of bang through real quick. So, I mean, basically, like this is starting obviously with the Fearless competition. So, I do want to say that our predictions are not going to be based off of the fucking whack ass Fearless stuff because
Oh,
there's
of
going to be
course not.
some really weird results because it's the new season combined with Fearless. And it is pretty irrelevant to the scope of the rest of the season. And this is like the LCS lock in. So I anticipate that there are going to be some levels of upsets. This is more talking about how it's going to be in the spring and summer splits. I do think that you have to say not even really because they are currently the reigning champions, because I do think that if you replay that last final like 10 times, Gen.G probably wins like 8 of those. So I did think, Gen.G was the better team than Hanwha. Most people did coming into the World Championship. But I think with Zeus's addition, you have to look at Hanwha's roster because of the changes that have been made in T1 and Gen.G and say this team is likely to kind of hit the ground running the fastest, right? So I would tip them as like pre-MSI winners.
This is the problem I have. I wanted to see where you're going to go on that because I know what you mean. Like if the other teams had all made massive moves, I would agree. On paper, you'd have to give it time of life because they already were really good and potentially they'd done an upgrade and also taken a player from T1. But I will say the problem is Gen.G is still the exact same top side. Ruler did play in the past with Jovi anyway, and then it's only really the support guy that we're unsure about. So I also think it's those two. Those are the 1A, 1B for me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The potential of the Gen.G roster is really incredible. Like if those 4 players are just actually the best at their role, this could be a really insane year in League of Legends.
And there were 2 support players on LCK last year that were thought of as being kind of better than the teams that they were on. One of them was Pleta and the other one was Duro. They picked up Duro. Duro really did have some strong engaged performances. Chovy and Ruler have now signed 3-year deals, so they'll be with Gen.G for a long time. The criticisms you're going to look for is like, Duro has to step up on this team.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I will point out that Gen.G was very good at taking delight from Breon and then immediately kind of using their support system and staff and everything to elevate him to a point where now he's like a superstar level support player. And so that was really beneficial to them. The thing that holds me back a little bit about Gen.G, even though I do think they will be very...
mean joke, but technically, Coach Kim from Gen.G did win Worlds with Baolan, so he can do anything with support players, Monty. He is a genius. He's a support whisperer.
So I do think that there's question marks around Duro. I don't think you can look at Ruler's performance last year and say it was his best. Now, it's my personal belief that Ruler can easily snap back into form. But if we're just, from the JDG that we saw in 2023, but his performance in 2024 it's not like he was the best ADC in LPL, not even by a long shot. He wasn't top 3, in my opinion. So I think that there will be questions like, is Ruler as good as he was on Gen.G or on the initial like JDG super team roster? Those are going to have there are going to be questions swirling about that. I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to be fine. I think he was probably demotivated last year from the changes that were made to JDG because that wasn't obviously the team that he signed up to play with and was very close to Golden Roading with. So I could understand why he might have a dip in motivation. Also, I think coming back to Korea will remotivate him, but he does have to play with a much less experienced player in Duro in his lane. But they have kept together the core of this roster. They did lose probably some of the shot calling that they had with Lehens and some of the in-game leadership. So that I think is concerning, which is why I tend to just put Hanwha like a little bit of ahead. Like the upgrade to Hanwha in the top lane is still there. Peanut is still one of the best shot callers in the entire world, and they will have more tools to utilize. And if you literally just look at some of Hanwha's games, I mean, look at the finals. Thorin was like straight up losing them games in the final. I mean, that Camille game was fucking tragic. And this team was able to win a final where they had kind of default losses with some of Doran's play. And Zeus is a player who can really put you over the top. So for me, I agree it's kind of like 1A, 1B, but there's just too much unknown about will Ruler get back into shape? Sure. Is Duro ready to like transcend to the next level? But certainly the pieces are there. We've seen Gen.G elevate support players before. Having a veteran player like Ruler in your lane is certainly going to help develop Duro, but it might be a little bit rough at first.
But this way, I already thought Hanwha Life actually had an underrated flaw to their game. Like, I actually think it took a lot to beat them in series, even at Worlds they were good. Like, this was a good fucking team. Yeah, people forget even the series they played against Gen G was fucking straight fire. That was a great best of three. So I do think they were already really good. Zeus, by the way, is an upgrade. Like, I actually think that is one of the craziest off-season steals I've ever seen, mate. Like, I did T1, gave him up. Like, if I was T1 for real, that's the player I'm paying after Faker the most money. I'm saying that's the guy I have to have. So I can't believe they let him go. So I'm with you. But this way, the difference is, I can't see a world where Hanwha Life is below top two. But I do just think if Gen G, if those four players, Keen, Canyon, Chovy, and Ruler, really play at the level that's possible, this could be one of the craziest lineups ever. Like, this has like KT Super Team vibes about, you know, where you just look and you're like, bro, like, I take 2 or 3 of these players as my stars. I can have 4 at once. And the best part about Ruler rejoining Chovy is, bro, it worked. They just looked awesome before. They had no issues at all playing together. So, and the key thing with Keen is his whole career, he could be a carry and he could be the weak side. So he can easily be the person who just pivots depending on the game. By the way, Zeus can do that for Hanwha too, but I actually think Zeus potentially being a carry threat in Hanwha was also a big upgrade for them. So I'm with you. I think these two teams are fucking insane, mate. They both look really good.
Yeah, there's interesting like champ pool flexibility between Zeus and Zeka as well. It really feels like this is a roster with a lot of threats from
imagine if
Hanwha.
Champions come into the meta, mate. They're gonna have fucking run the draft. Yeah.
Yone is obviously going to be a huge pick if it's in meta for them. It's going to be a really good team. Hanwha has multiple world champions. They've got 3 world champions on the roster too, all from different world championship lineups, which rarely happens that you get 3 players who all won worlds separately later on the same lineup.
It's also a bomber, Monty, because I can't handle the fact that when they're in the dressing room, Zeka's like, hey, I remember when I won in 2022. And then Viper's like, well, I won in 2021, of course. And Zeus is like, I won the last couple. And then Peanut's just there like.
But Thorin, this is how Peanut gets his title, man. This is how he gets his chip.
I hope it is, Monty. I hope it is.
And we've talked about this before, but this Hanwha roster has the upside to be the best League of Legends roster of all.
It's mega. Yeah. By the way, one thing I think is quite cool.
That ceiling is there.
Here's the coolest thing I think about the last 3 off seasons, Monty, is after each off season, it's not just like we're doing it for hype like people do in sports. Each off season, you literally get 1 or 2 lineups, usually one in the LPL, one in the LCK, where you can really look and go, maybe this is the team that's finally going to do the Grand Slam. Like, it's actually really plausible. It's mad because each season when they change, you keep thinking, JDG moved the team. JDG, you think it's going to stop. They keep making them. Like, same with Hanwha Life, absolutely. Again, what I want people to think of is this. Right, I feel like people's brains are still too broken on how Zeka used to be. Bro, if you think of Zeka in the last 6 months of 2024, he's at worst like a top 3 or top 4 mid lane in the whole world, bro. Like, he's really good. At times, he probably even, especially when like that fucking ADC meta was, they probably spiked even higher, actually. If you look at this roster again, like I said about the floor, bro, who's bad in this roster? Like, I think, by the way, again, I said this in the past, in the same way as Zeus going over is like a wild one. I always thought, even though I understand for the shot calling, I always thought Gen G ever letting fucking Delight go is crazy to me. I think that guy is so unbelievably good. Like, in my opinion, he is going to go along with Kerrier, and one day at the end of League, it will be like, who's the best supports ever? Because this guy's even good at all the internationals, mate. He's just fucking fire. He's not even the big name. They're all just mega on this roster. This looks really sick. As long as Zeka doesn't get some nightmare meta, how can this team be bad? They can't.
Yeah, and even Zeka's not good at control mages, but he is better than he used to be. And last summer he was on fire. I mean, he was really good. The spring moments with the Corki, rough. When it got to summer, he was really flying though. He was the second best mid laner behind Chovy and LCK in summer. I don't even think that's remotely controversial. And they have the shot calling and they have the synergy, and Viper is obviously great. So I'm excited about watching Hanwha. I think the other team that you're gonna like, obviously we have to talk about T1. They suffered a major downgrade. They're still getting DDoS, so their ability to practice is somewhat limited. It's never
going to get fixed, though. Do you think? It's been like a year now. What is this?
I mean, we talked about on the show how they put out that bug bounty for it. There's something really wrong with the client that is allowing this to happen. And like I said previously, it might have something to do with the controls that the Korean government puts on video games to tell you how many hours you've been playing or kick you off. It used to kick you off if you were below a certain age at certain times of night. So there might be a very bad vulnerability that has been introduced by this mandatory system from the Korean government that affects all games. But it's hard to know. But apparently Riot can't fix it. And as long as T1 streams, if they're not streaming, I don't think they get DDoSed as much. But if they try and stream, that's when it's not that they get DDoSed, it's that their teammates or opponents get DDoSed to basically ruin the solo queue experience.
Sadly, for some reason, every person who repeats that they get DDoSed, Monty, makes it sound like they get DDoSed in all games and they just can't play League of Legends. They can scrim still, you idiots. It's just if they stream and play like solo queue and stuff, they get fucked up. Which, by the way, still does affect you, obviously, but it's not like people kept trying to make it sound like they weren't even scrimming, bro. Like, no one knows when they're scrimming. That's secret, obviously.
It's also very important that they used to get DDoSed, but they themselves do not get DDoSed anymore. It's their teammates and opponents, so it's not affecting any internal.
They'll still ruin the game, obviously. Yeah, but yes.
So that's a very important distinction to make. But T1 now, nobody reasonably thought they were going to win world championships after the world championship after making it as the 4th seed and being 1 game away from elimination. It was a Cinderella story that got them to the point. They certainly pulled it together, had a great run. But I don't think you look at this roster, and even though T1 wanted to keep it together for brand reasons, the reason why they didn't re-sign or negotiate with those players sooner was that nobody thought this roster was worth keeping together. Yes. And now they are worse than they were.
Monty, as you're pointing out, is even T1 all didn't believe they were going to win Worlds, because if they did, they'd have done a G2 and you already signed them before Worlds. That way, when you then win, there is no Zeus option to go. You either buy him for a million bazillion or he signs with me, or he stays in the contract. So I know what you mean, Monty. That's the worst part about that, is that especially, Monty, the way that only once they won Worlds did they rush all hands on deck to do that marketing campaign on ZOF. It's obvious that was last minute. That was like you were fucking doing your homework at the last 11th hour. There's no way that was really the plan, because I agree with you. I think it's the opposite, Monty. It's one of the reasons I had so little sympathy for T1 and Joe Marsh, because I think it's the opposite, bro. I think what they actually tried to do in 2024 is min-max a world championship roster, and even though those players had just won 2023 Worlds, tell them sort of like, I guess if you win again, you can maybe stay. And then it turns out the players won the gamble, by the way. One, at that point, you're supposed to just get the biggest contracts in the world, mate. You're 2-time back-to-back world champions. Every player there, for real, should have the expectation I should potentially be the highest paid player in my role. And by the way, as you can see by the other ones, I'll still never understand, Monty, how a T1 fan thinks it's cool that T1 got Gumayusi and Keria to sign for less by telling them Zeus was signing. I'll never understand that. To me, I actually like my favourite players to check notes, get paid. It's a crazy idea. I don't think that there's intentioned servants that owe me the ability to play in League of Legends. Like, I think they should be allowed to be paid the biggest salaries in the world. So I think this is a mega in this offseason. Because I also, like I said in my video as well, mate, the worst thing they did was this. Zeus is actually the only player, Monty, bearing in mind they already had Faker under contract, that you could actually fuck up in the offseason if you signed everyone else except him because of what he did to the roster. Like, he was the slack in the fucking draft for you. He could take champions for Faker. He could be the carry if Gumayusi was on
blinding. He was blinding more than any other top. He was blind picking more than any other top laner in the league. I always
tell people this. On paper, nobody should be laughing at Thorin like they are, bro. The guy has won 4 of the last 5 splits of LCK. Like, on paper, that's actually a resume about the best player you can get to replace Zeus. But he isn't Zeus, mate. He can't do any of those intangibles. So the saddest thing is I also think that they completely entered this offseason. Because here's why, Monty. If you knew Zeus wasn't coming and you were getting Thorin, then you better be the one who goes ham for like a fucking Viper or a Ruler or some mega AD carry. You better get the fucking stud AD carry. But they did it the other way around. They built the roster and then they didn't get the key piece for my money.
And that's the problem. Like, certainly T1 could do well in the right meta, but if you just ask yourself the question, who is going to carry on this roster? Yes. You have a lot of problems because Guma has never at any point in time been the best AD carry in Korea or in the world. He's good, but he's not transcendently good.
When he's at his best, the credit goes to Kerry anyway, if you think about it. So he never gets to be number 1 no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, the joke obviously is he even the best AD carry on his team, right? He does have very real weaknesses in certain metas where his Ezreal is trash, his Zeri is trash. He hasn't been successful in a lot of metas. Now, you get this guy into a Jinx meta, great. We're cooking, right? But you get this guy on Caitlyn. Awesome. World-class, obviously.
I used to be very critical of this player. I do think he is an example of a player, though, Monty, that has actually improved year on year in T1. Like,
he was
I'll
the
give
best
you
player
the
on their team
example.
last year.
When he first came into their roster, I even used to be one of the people who thought they should have put Teddy in instead of him because Teddy played that super conservative ADC style. This guy used to int all the time. The amount of times this guy went in and just got killed. This last year, people remember at Worlds, he was like not even dying in any of the games. That was actually a very good year for Gumayushi. But even said, that's to make the point, Monty. He still wasn't like Prime Ruler or Prime Viper. Or these guys are monsters. He was just a very good player. Yeah.
And Gumayushi, I think, was very consistent last year.
Yes.
And, you know, that was his big strength. Other players, like Viper, had higher highs but lower lows. And Guma was by far, I think, he was the best player across the entire year on T1. Like, maybe he didn't have the highs that players like Owner did or Faker did at Worlds. But he certainly didn't have the same lows. Keria also was like pretty bad for parts of summer, whereas Guma maintained a level of consistency. So that's great to have. And Guma is a valuable piece of T1. But the problem is that you have to have some other carry player. And Faker's performance has been incredibly inconsistent. He was the second best mid laner behind Chovy in spring, but he was fucking terrible in summer. He was terrible in the summer split, and he redeemed himself in a big way by being clutch at Worlds. But it's like, okay, maybe your theory is that this is the most clutch roster of all time and they're just going to clutch up at the World Championship. But man, T1 looked rough compared to the names that they had on paper.
That works. That narrative now, because you won the 2 Worlds, isn't even as whack as it used to be when T1 fans used to say they were the most clutch. But here's the problem. You don't even have that roster anymore. You've now put Thorin, an anti-clutch player, onto your greatest clutch player. Remember, let's all accept all these premises. You've got a team, Monty, that isn't day-to-day the best team. It's not even the best in the LCK most of the time. But if the right circumstances happen and they get to a Worlds, but now that doesn't even apply because of Thorin. You've actually hinted the whole thing, bro. You've hinted it all. So, what are you doing?
That's the problem, is like, who is going to step up on this team? You could hit the right meta and you could do really well still. I still think T1 is going to be a good team. They will be a top 3, top 4 team. Probably top 3, maybe top 4 if some other teams step up. And Doran, you know, the cliff that happens, so like it goes like Zeus Keen, Doran, and then there's a giant gulf between Doran and the rest of the top laners. So I don't want to make it sound like Doran is dog shit, because he's not. He's still clearly a top 3 top laner within LCK, but he's not Keen and he's not Zeus, and he's certainly not on the level of some of the Chinese great top laners.
You've nailed it. I was going to say this. Here's the obvious thing you say to yourself, Monty. It's also what I said in my video about Zeus. Here's how I know that people only want, like the classic refrain, it's only once you don't have it anymore, you realize what you had. The reason that you all know that Doran is a massive downgrade for Zeus is because when you think of that last Worlds final, if Zeus wasn't there, by the way, that would have been a clap from fucking BLG. Bid was on his shit, mate. He was almost nobody could go toe-to-toe with him, right? Zeus did about the best you could possibly do. Who the fuck would want to see Doran go against that Bin? Mate, that's a nightmare. That's a recipe for disaster.
In the finals, Bin was the best individual player on either.
He was mega.
Period. He was actually the finals MVP, if we're being honest.
I think so, yeah.
Over the course of all the games. So I think when you look at T1, their floor is high. Right. And Doran
right. It's not even just Bin, mate. Run through all the list. There's going to be like Zika in the LPL. There's fucking the Shies back with IJ. Mate, there's a lot of hard top laners to play in League of Legends. So but I agree. It's why the saddest thing about the Doran side for me, mate, is I feel like because he's the last to join and he isn't Zeus, he will get scapegoated. But it's not totally his fault. Like, by the way, all those other things I just said Zeus did, those aren't your job as a top laner. You can just turn up as a top laner and go, I'm a top laner. I play top lane champions. Give me like a meta pick and I'll play. Doran could do that, by the way. The point is, I think Zeus had like an extra gear that not many top laners have, actually, by the way. You know what I'm saying? Like, those things he brought to other players in the team, that's very rare that you get that, I think.
Also, his choking seems to have gone away, which is...
He got way better himself as well. Don't you think? He was way more... Like, by the way, I do think he's one of the reasons in 2022 where they lost to fucking DRX. It's why I get why they gave King in that fucking finals MVP. Like, Zeus fucking lost that one for them. But the difference is, you look at the 2023 Worlds, and then especially this last year, I thought he was mega this last year, but he had an amazing Worlds, yeah.
So I think, you know, T1 feels like the natural team to put at number 3. And the question is, are some of these other rosters that have rookies on them going to step up?
By the way, one last thing, though. That's not even insignificant itself, though, Monty. The idea T1 won't be top 2. That means no MSI, mate. Bro, this is big. That's viewership. It's going to be very big. That's the other thing people forget about Faker's career. He's not going to be at the tournament, potentially. That'll be pretty wild.
Don't worry. He'll be at the Esports World Cup a week after MSI.
Okay. By the way, that's the nightmare fuel, isn't it? Like, this is the year where T1 wins nothing except EWC. And then all the fans have to, like, no, but it's a world championship. Let's do that shit again. Because the sad thing is, because we couldn't possibly know they would win Worlds, Monty. Let's be real. It isn't just winning Worlds. It is Worlds plus EWC, which actually edged it to get them all these stupid Team of the Year awards. Like, everyone would have given them the RX3, but then everyone just counted EWC to make it, like, top them over the top, didn't they? So, sadly, that did end up mattering more than we thought.
So I think some of the other teams, like D plus Key is the interesting one because they were quite clearly terrible. Bengi has joined as a coach. So Bengi Hachani are on this roster, which were
Two of the biggest bums of all time.
Two of the biggest bums of all time, which is hilarious that they're the coaches.
Champions, to be fair. You got to give them that. They are champions, mate. My favorite player, Flame, wasn't a champion. These guys have got all the rings, you know. What a world.
It is super funny, though, that they've joined D+. So Shiwu, which is their new top laner. I'm not an LCK Challengers guy. Don't listen to me. There is hype around him. They kept Lucid, Showmaker, and Aiming, and they brought back Beryl. Now, they needed the shot calling. Over the last several years, D+ has tried every way to get shot calling. It has failed. So I think going back to this is actually a good idea, even though Beryl is questionable in terms of his individual ability. This could be a really fun roster. And if this clicks, if Showmaker gets over the burnout, if we get to see his old form, if Shiwu ends up being super good, if Beryl is reinvigorated, like this could be a really fun team to watch, and especially with Aiming on it, because Aiming's going to get all the resources, right? That's just how this roster works.
If you watched this show last year, Aiming was me and Monty's MVP of the summer split. Like, he just was. Like, if you don't know, his numbers were really astonishing. The things he was doing, like the percentage carry and all the scenario. He had something mad. Like, there was times where he was barely ever losing a game. I know he didn't play like that at Worlds, and people unfortunately only think of him, and especially because he was a KT player, they only ever remember the internationals. But this guy, again, the floor on some of these players isn't bad. Like, I agree with you. The problem with this squad, though, is, Monty, it's not like star-studded. It's more like it has to be a real team. It has to have like real team cohesion. As you say, the Beryl factor has to be real and actually give them shot calling in the game. Because all of a sudden, when you go and look, if the Shiwu guy's any good, basically you've got real carry players at all the positions. So I agree. It's actually not as bad as people think. And again, Lucid's a rookie last year. He could take an evolution this year. Yeah, this is actually a fairly shrewdly put together squad. It's got a nice mix of veterans, rookies, shot calling, actual carry players. Low key, I could actually see this being an interesting team. The question is, though, are they going to be good? Because I'm with you. If you think of how that team worked at Worlds, they were the fucking Oprah. They were just giving wins to everyone because they couldn't fucking close a game. It's like the spirit of old Abadage 100 Thieves inhabited them. They could never close a game, Monty.
Well, it's like I said. I mean, I warned people that D+ sucked coming into Worlds if you hadn't watched. And that's why it was so embarrassing that they beat T1 in the qualifiers. But it's not a good team. The other, there are a couple other teams that may be interesting. The thing about T1 is that if T1 hits a bad meta and they fall, and say D+ or KT or even Nongshim hit a good meta, the middle of the pack could be pretty tight, I think, in LCK this year. Because KT, they're bringing back Perfect. They have Cuz on the roster again with BDD, and Cuz and BDD have played with each other, both on the iteration of KT in 2024, as well as Kingzone and other rosters historically. So there's a lot of inbuilt synergy. They work really well together. Dokdom is kind of disappointing. I would have rather seen Pays, I think, on this roster, but Pays ended up going to China. And then they promoted Wei from their challenger squad, and there's some hype around Wei as a support player. But Dokdom was never really that vocal, so I kind of wonder if that's the best pairing to get Wei up to speed. But if you hit a big upside with KT, maybe they get as high as third, fourth place.
I mean, the top side of the map could be pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you as well, mate. I actually do think people always underestimate Cos, because in the early days, he used to get mocked a lot for being like an intro or whatever. And I think people just don't know that in the past years. I'm pretty sure he just went for money, mate. Like, he was just in a scenario where he got like...
He was really good last
teams. Yeah. So the people think because he was on like a bad team, he's shit. No, he's actually... the last few years, he's a pretty good player, actually.
He was the best player on Freaks last year. And he was oftentimes the only way they would win games if he was like on Viego or something like that. So KT could be decent. Nongshim, so King and Sylvie, Fisher, Jiwoo, and Lehen. So you might look at this and you might say, that's kind of a weird roster, but Lehen's Jiwoo. Jiwoo is actually a very good AD carry player. They kept him. He's coming into another year of development. He's now with Lehen's. Kingen is at least solid. Fisher was
actually good in summer, by the way. He wasn't bad last year.
Sylvie, I think, deserves more credit than he got. He was a pretty decent jungler, especially for being on a bad roster. But this is probably a 5th, 6th team maybe higher.
The
floor is pretty high on this one.
Surely is the Lehens angle, Monty. That's the scenario where how have you got a player like this? This is someone where if they actually are the shot caller people make out, they could have a massive effect on this team. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other team that people might be sleeping on a little bit is probably DRX. Rich, which you might remember from HOTS.
Every region now, mate. He was in fucking LPLs and LCQs and LCS. He's been everywhere, yeah.
He is pretty good. They have Juhan, the former backup DRX jungler, and Sponge, who is a younger player. They got UCal back from LPL. UCal was really good on bad LPL teams, so you might not think he's
also,
very
if
good.
You look on Gamepedia, he looks like he is cosplaying Mish.
True.
Look it up. That's a good joke for you.
Teddy's a veteran. Ondil is an interesting player because when Ondil was on the Freaks, he would come in and out of the roster. So I think he had some confidence issues and I think he mental boomed at time. But when he was on, he was actually a very promising support player. So the question is whether you can keep him week to week in shape to go. But I think DRX actually kind of has a sneaky, interesting roster. The other rosters in this league, we don't need to touch on them very much. Vicla's back. Vicla was bad on Rare Adam. I don't really understand why he's back in any roster. Where else can we go? The Freaks, they got rid of CV Max, but they have Rapid Star as the head coach.
It's not a terrible lineup, though. The roster's not terrible considering it's Freaks.
Yeah. And look, I'm excited to see Rapid Star as a coach. He's a very different style of coach than CV Max. Rapid Star, since his pro playing career ended many years ago, he's been bouncing around the US. If you guys didn't know, he was actually remote assistant coaching for Team Liquid last year. Very good macro coach, very good strategic coach. He's got Berserker Life is Back from his trip to China on FBX, where he was actually really good as part of that Milky Way roster. He was one of the keys there.
Life is joining a team where he is downgrading to Pioshik. So
look, I hate Pioshik. I also think Bulldog is never going to be good at this point in time. His laning is too weak and his champion pool is too limited. And he was a disgusting ADC merchant last split. And when he didn't have those, he was just absolutely terrible. So I'm not sold on him. But at least the bottom of the league, there's some hype. If you want to see new players, Hambach, which is the new jungler who comes from the KT Challengers roster on Breon, is supposed to be really hyped up. Closers on Breon now, so that's a pretty major upgrade for them in the mid lane. The bottom of this league, the average strength of LCK teams looks way better this year than it did in the past several years.
Yes.
So I think it's more interesting to watch some of the bottom rosters, whereas it felt like, especially, 2024, 2023 is really polarized. And you got one or two maybe interesting matchups per week, but at least even some of the bad teams have hyped rookies or they're bringing back players that we know are good, like UCal. So I think it's fun. I think this is going to be a fun season. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Where do you want to go? LEC, LPL?
One thing about LCK. The other thing I'll say is this. Sadly, this is now, I'm just going to say it. It's now a bridge too far. Now it actually would be unreasonable to even think it's possible. But I actually think, if anything, the one upside, if you're not a team on here to be, you just don't glaze them, is Faker is going to have to do some fucking insane shit this year, mate, if he wants to do if he wants any trophies. He is going to have some the shit he did in Game 4 and Game 5 of this World Series, but semi-regularly, mate. If he really wants to be a champion this year, it's going to be the hardest task ever, I think. So if he can do it even once, fair play. But I think that is a bridge too far for me. Come on. Because as we said, you don't have one reliable carry threat, unfortunately. Because you can never know with the meta for Gumayushi. I don't know, yeah. But the upside is, if T1 isn't a top 2 team in Korea, then Korea's probably in good shape, which is true. Right, let's go to LPL then. I think LPL mix has been mega.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the top teams in LPL. Now, Demacia Cup already happened, guys. I wouldn't read too much into Demacia Cup results because BLG wasn't playing their main roster. It's weird. It has nothing to do with the new season. But Anyone's Legend won. That is interesting.
The top 8 team, if people remember.
The top 8 team that massively overperformed in summer. They are back. Shanks was crazy good, even though he was already a veteran player. He diversified his play style a whole bunch. They have Tarzan and Flandre now. As well as Hope and Kyle in the bot lane. This is a team that I think actually has the pieces to to be activated by Tabe now. They were already punching above their weight. Tabe has been one of the best strategic coaches in the world for a long time. His teams tend to overperform, and now they have a lot of really good pieces, I think, to make some waves in the LPL. So they will be exciting again. They were good last year when they didn't have good players, and with Shanks developing. So now I think they're going to be in a position to do a lot better. They already, like I said, showed that at Demacia Cup, but it wasn't against the strongest competition. Billy running it back. That's going to be interesting. Top esports is going to be feast or famine. I mean,
one thing we have to talk about BLG though is the gamble though is that they did let Jun go and then they decided to actually go with Wayne. Now the reason why that's so big to me is even though people keep going, yeah, but Thorin, it's just the meta. No, do you know how weird it is that you change junglers and almost win worlds? Like that's not some minor thing. So I'm interested to see what they'll be like with only Wayne in the lineup. There's no Jun compatibility to come back in, mate. Because he's on JD Gaming. People don't know.
Yeah, but Wei also carried them for a lot of the year and was really good in spring. So I mean, it's still going to be a very strong lineup. Top esports with 369 and Crisp addition to Kanavi, Cream, and Jackie Love just feels like potentially the most coin flip roster of all time. They're either going to just be absolutely phenomenal or they'll just continue to choke and underperform in the playoffs. Weibo.
One factor though, they do have now. They do have
That's true.
Though. That's the factor that'll be interesting. Because by the way, I agree with you. If you look at the roster, like this is like the ultimate fucking int off roster, isn't it? It's like bold my bay while I int. But again, is along with Tabe, another legendary LPL coach, it somehow always gets more than you expect out of the lineup and makes some world class. So pretty spicy in itself.
Yeah, Weibo is Breathe, Tian, Xiaohu, Light, and Hung, which is an interesting roster coached by Nofei. That is potentially quite good. Obviously, legendary players there. JDG mixed it up. They took Pays after they lost Ruler, and they took Scout. So Ale Jun, Scout, Pays, and Missing could be a massive upgrade with CV really Max as a coach.
Because one thing I love about that lineup as well, Monty, is whoever made that roster, if it was CV Max, bro, he not only gets it, but he seems to agree with us on pace. Because what you don't do is, remember, in the old lineups, this used to be a ruler team. This team isn't just protect the pace. You've got Ale as a carry top, and you've got Scout, who's like probably one of the best mid lanes in the entire world, and plays this entire style that you always play off him. The best part is you can actually cover some of Pace's weaknesses and just play to his strengths, mate. Like, this could be awesome. I actually think it's a really well-balanced squad.
Yeah, they could be very good. And then the last interesting team to talk about is IG, which obviously is bringing back the Shy and Rookie from their World Championship winning roster. They have JJ, who's long been a great...
This roster has won Worlds in different times.
Yeah, the Shy's JJ, Rookie, Gala, and Mako. I mean, it's a
MSI. Sorry, yes. He's won MSI, but the rest of all won Worlds. Yes.
Yeah, it's a massive roster of legendary players. It's going to be super fun if the Shy is in form and can do well. Clearly, the ceiling of this roster is sky high. Hopefully, this means we finally get Rookie at international events.
Yes. I think this is a fabulous one. By the way, as a Rookie fan, I thought it was just going to be like the last few years. He's going to be on like the 4th or 5th best roster. And you just hope he overperforms and steals the last world spot. Bro, this actually looks like, obviously it's dependent on the Shy. There's an outside chance this could actually be a team contender for the LPL title. Like the floor of this roster looks really good. And you've added in pieces like Mako. Yeah, I think this looks fabulous, mate.
People will also criticize the fact that Danny is the head coach, but like I actually really like Danny as a coach because I think he cooks up some super weird strategies at times. And I really like the outside of the box champion picks and comps that he does. But in the past, he has been failed by the players doing an extremely bad job of executing those compositions. Whereas if he has this level of player on average and this versatility, like we could see some really weird shit from them that would be very successful. And you have to imagine they have the shot calling and individual capability to pull it off. And Danny has been, I think, let down, especially when he was on Damwon, by the players at times who just didn't understand what he was thinking. But this roster may be able to pull it off, so that's fun too. Those are going to be the major players in LPL, though. So you guys can look forward to that. We won't go through because there's too many teams in LPL. Shall we switch to Europe or NA?
Let's do LEC.
Okay.
I hit that earlier. The obvious initial angle is you actually can't do what you could do the last 2 years. You can't just go at G2 by default because Mate, this is one thing where people they've combined all the cancer narratives. So because the Skewmond guy, by the way, if you don't know, Kalist at ADC and now Skewmond at Jungle, are you ready? You know, you've all watched, you haven't really, but I'll pretend you all did because you all tell me you did. You've all also watched all of League of Legends history. You've seen every great player ever. And you know what? Even though these guys have never played one game ever, they're already the greatest of all time. The Skewmond guy's going to be better than Yankos. The Kalist guy's better than fucking Prime Uzi. Like, one of the weird things about this roster is because this Skewmond guy has massive hype from behind the scenes with coaches and analysts and stuff, people are just assuming he's going to walk in and be better than Yike, which is like, we have to have these conversations. Like, I think it's a gamble to take rookies, even if you're G2, by the way. By the way, that whole thing of like Labrov for Mickey X, are we ignoring that? Like, when I was watching G2 last year, Monty, even though Mickey X definitely entered a fucking ton of games and at times where he looked terrible, the amount of times I also saw him save games that were like almost unwinnable or do like a crazy macro play, like a mid game out of nowhere. That's not what Labrov's necessarily going to do. So I'm quite interested in this roster. I think there's a very high ceiling, but I don't know how this roster is going to work out. What are your thoughts on G2?
So I think what G2 was trying to do by removing Mickey X and getting Labrov in is that they are saying we really want to be a lane dominant team, right? That's how Hansama likes to play.
Yes.
Broken Blade has all of his weird counter picks in the top side and his weird champion pool where he can get advantages. So I think the question is there even going to be a lot of pressure on Skewmond if they're able to play and draft in a way where they have winning matchups and they're crushing their lanes? So I think they're looking for a smoother snowball than they had previously, because a lot of the time G2 would end up in scenarios where they die a little bit early, they're playing from behind, then they have to rely on their creativity and shot calling to get back into the game. And they simply, like, they're hoping, I think, not to do that anymore. And just to have a more standard style League of Legends where you can just snowball the lane wins into a victory. Now, this also takes a lot.
It makes sense if you think about it, Monty, because the first year of the other roster, they were great in the early game. But this last year, actually, they often felt like they were behind a lot of the time. So I can get why they wanted to switch. Who wants to be behind every game? You want to be ahead. That's when you have the chance.
So, but the downside to this is obviously removing Mickey X removes kind of their Joker card that they always had, whether that was the Lysandra into the Rakan pick or the Hail of Blades Poppy support.
Everything. Yes.
So they really, for Mickey X's issues potentially of not being as strong in lane a lot of the time, there were specific lane counter picks that worked really well for them and caused them to win lane. And maybe they're looking at that and say, well, if we had a standard support that would win lane that hard, then it would be easier. But also, I think their versatility. Now, it's possible that a lot of this was coming from the coaching staff, because we know that Dylan Falco is great and they have a very strong strategic coaching staff. And what's going to happen is that Labrov will be able to play those picks, or maybe that was the genius. But we also know that Mickey X used to be like a Poppy main. So it was probably him bringing in some of these ideas at the very least. So the question is, are these players good enough to crush lane at the world level? Because a lot of the success, if we go back to MSI, was Mickey X being weird. That got them into top 4 status in the world. It's a gamble. It's obviously a risk. But I think that Skewmond is going to look good simply because it's easier to jungle when your lanes are winning and you have that space. So the pressure really isn't going to be on him. And I think people will overhype him, but it'll probably be overhyped because the lanes are doing well, and that makes it easy for junglers.
One of the things that's really boring is if you're a fan and you overhype someone, there's no downside, mate. If they make it and they become the greatest player ever, you go, I said that, but because you're just one needle in a haystack, random shit that no one cares about, we didn't see you say it, so you just get to say it later. But if you're wrong, well, also, there's no consequence. You just get to just go on being a random person. If we ever hype a player, we're idiots if they're wrong. I mean, I alluded to this before we started the show, Monty. I've just put up a video live that I did on my stream a few days back last week, where it's about Kalist from Karmikop. We'll get to that soon, obviously. And people hyping this guy as though it's going to be like, as though like he's like, fuck caps, as though he's like the next faker, mate. So my problem is just, why do we have to do this endlessly? Why can't we just set reasonable expectations for rookies? And by the way, what you're describing also is way more reasonable for what they're doing. By the way, think about when they brought you Yaikin. They clearly didn't just throw him into the baptism of fire and go, hey, enjoy this, bitch. Like they made the game like a Peter Dunn style, like you make it comfortable for him, you take too much agency away from him early, then you give him it slowly. If they do it that way, it could obviously work out great. I trust the people who told me the Skewmore guy's really good. I just don't know why we have to... I actually think, for real, are you ready for a great line? Put it in the fucking title if you want. In a way, Caps joining the LEC was the worst thing to ever happen to European League of Legends, because it made every moron GM go, I can find find another Caps. And there's only ever been one. There hasn't even been anyone close. Like, by the way, the only contender with him for greatest player from Europe was fucking Perks, and that wasn't on like a hands level. It was like other factors, intangible. So I do think sadly, Europe is just obsessed with overhyping rookies, mate. I'm always going to say, when a rookie comes in, I half expect some failed games in the first split, mate. I don't think he should be the best player in the region, but obviously I agree with you. The rest of the squad is there. So the Skewmon guy, he is the only rookie. Everyone else is mega experienced. They've all been at the top level. Even remember, Labrov was in BDS that was like a contender the last 2 years. So I actually do like that environment, though, where you like bed the one rookie in. By the way, rookie jungler as well. So let's take as much pressure off him as we can, and let's just gradually build him up. And then maybe by Worlds he's at his peak, you know.
Yeah, but I think what's going to happen is that people are going to immediately, overhype Skewmon because of the way that this team has been built, and also because I trust, like you're saying, that Dylan Falco and the coaching staff of G2 are going to grease the wheels on this. They're going to have level ones. I mean, G2 is the king team of level ones where they would constantly be getting advantages. This is how they kind of brought up Yike. You know what I mean? Is they played to his strengths. They limited his downsides. They had level ones to get him advantages. They had scripted early game plans. And as a result, I think Skewmon probably is going to get overrated. But I do think G2 is still going to be a very good team. Now, there are other contenders within this league. Fnatic with Upset and Mickey X in the bot side is going to be very interesting because the volatile aspect of Fnatic was Humanoid and Oscarinen. Now, do I think that keeping the top side of this team is the best move? No, but Fnatic doesn't have any money to change it. Humanoid clearly doesn't give a fuck. But even Humanoid's floor is still good in Europe.
Here's what will infuriate you, bro. Every single person publicly who I talk to about Humanoid Razork still to this day denies that is even a thing, that him and Razork didn't have like amazing synergy. And they're just like, it's just a Reddit narrative. They just don't believe, people in Fnatic, they just don't believe it's real, mate. They're just committed to that, which is why we're now going into, what is this, like the 4th year in a row of these people playing together or something fucking bonkers like that. Like, okay.
Well, they just can't get out of the contract.
Really good. True.
They just can't get out of the contract. And that's the nature of it. I don't think you willingly engage in this because if you were Fnatic, would you rather have JoJo? Yes. In my mind. Despite all the issues that came up with JoJo on Cloud9, him being on Mad Lions, like there are ways that I think Fnatic could have upgraded this roster. Probably would they have rather had Larson? There's another one. But Humanoid at this point is such a known quantity on the domestic and international stage that I think they're thinking, well, we don't have to make any changes because we're still going to be top 3 and we've got Upset and Mickey X right now. But, honestly, Thorin, I'm concerned because Mickey X didn't have the strongest performance last year, even though he was deservedly the MVP in 2023 of the LEC. He was really struggling in summer. And this roster, it's a roller coaster. Upset's been good. Upset's been bad. Mickey X been good. Mickey X has been bad. Oscarinen's been good. Oscarinen's been bad. This is very volatile, potentially, in terms of results.
It is, but the obviously the exciting part is if you imagine if everyone knocks it out of the park, it could be a really fucking, it could be the champion. Yeah, it actually could be. And even the grabs part I find interesting. Again, this is someone where I want someone like that to be dealing with massive personalities like Upset, Humanoid, and Razork. Yeah, of course. So I think, and also think about this. Not only did Upset, people forget this, he was in the Fnatic that had Humanoid and Razork when they made that super team back in 2022. But then also, if you think about all those stories, Upset was supposed to join G2 and play with Mickey X like 2 times or something in history at this point. It just never happened. So this is one of those ones where, as far as I know, those 2 players wanted to play together at some point, Monty. I think they actually respect each other. I think they're both good players, etc. So I think it's a very interesting prospect, especially because, remember, Upset has never won the LEC. This is a real chance to do it.
Yeah. I will now let you go off on your Callista Carmine Corp rant.
Right. Basically, here's the problem. If you want to evaluate the actual game part, this is slam dunk. Like, again, based on all the people I know, I've only watched a few games of this guy in the LPL EU Masters. If you go and listen to the coaches and stuff, they do say this guy is like an incredible talent. He will be one of the better LEC players. By the way, he's French, so it's obvious if you Carmine Cop, you'd want him. He was already coming through anyway. So I get all that. My problem is, it's already being presented. It's why I made a video I published today. And it's called, he's already the most overhyped player in esports. I didn't even say in League of Legends, because they've already done an article where It's not just for Carmine Corp fans. They did an article in L'Equipe magazine in France, like a mainstream sports magazine, the equivalent to, I don't like ESPN or something. I guess I don't know if they have a magazine in America. I don't know what the Slam magazine in basketball or something. If you want a modern sports analogy. And this article titled it "The Little Prince of Esports" and billed this guy Monty as though he was the greatest prodigy of all time. They were even saying shit like, at only 18 years old, he is the prodigy of French esports. By the way, as I say in my video, do you know why that's even such a whack hack line? Because first thing you've done there, Monty, is imply being 18 is crazy. Faker won Worlds when he was 17 years old, by the way. So what are we even doing there? If you don't know, Zero was the best player in all of Counter-Strike when he was 18 years old. Also, if you're going to talk about French prodigies, Zero only just came along now. Like, this guy hasn't even played one LEC game yet, and you've already hailed him, not even just as like a good LEC. You've made him the prince of esports. Bro, esports, as in, like, I assume Faker's your king, and right behind him in the lineage isn't, Chovy, fucking Knight, Bit. No, right behind him's a guy who's never played a major region game ever. What? And here's the thing, Monty. I said this earlier. Oh, don't worry, mate. I can't win when I do this, mate. Because if he turns out to be shit, they'll all go, well, we were just hyping him because he's French, he's a rookie. But if he turns out to be good, they'll say I just said he's bad. Even though nothing I said anywhere there said he's bad. Because I don't hype him to the heavens. I'm the arsehole, mate. Even though, I'll just make this question to you. Could you imagine, Monty, I give this analogy in my video, but I'll use you in this case. I use Dom in the video. Imagine when Jojo came along. Remember, EG scouted him out of solo queue. He's a super young player. He hadn't even played League. He was playing Fortnite. He looked like a prodigy. They even have that team, EG Prodigies. And by the way, he was even really good when he came in the LCS. Imagine if, before he'd played one LCS game, Monty came in public and went, Jojo Pion is the prince of all of esports, and it's only 17 or 18 is a prodigy of all of it. Imagine the mockery that would be rained down upon Monty or Dom or me if we ever said that. And by the way, if that player then didn't turn out to be the absolute best, that would haunt us for years, bro. That would be like some mockery that would never end. Like us saying T1 wouldn't win Worlds. But magically, if you're French or in Carmine Corp, you're allowed to, what I said in my video is, do the actual test case for credulity, Monty. You have taken a player that hasn't played his debut game and said he could be the best player to ever play League of Legends. You are out of your fucking mind. And you know what? Here's where I will upset them all. Because actually, Monty, it's a pretty safe bet to bet he won't be the greatest player in the history of esports. How's that a hot take, for fuck's sake? That would be the shittest hot take of all time. I think this French ADC has never played before, Monty, won't be the best player to ever play esports singularly ever. Crazy wacky idea, isn't it? But I will say, as a player, looks like a slam dunk signing. He looks like a good player. If you're French, there's an obvious angle to go with it.
Yeah, and look, I think Carmine Corp, they've gotten over the nepotism that caused them to be shitty. Kana is and has never been a favorite player of mine, but he's good enough for LEC.
He's never been bad. Yeah, he's all right. He's all right.
Yike, I think, will do well for Carmine Corp. Vladdy was actually
great chance for Yike to really show his value in this team as well. By the way, what if he's like an MVP candidate? He could really show us that he was better than we thought. Yeah.
The question is Targamas, because he was a mute and wasn't contributing to shot calling. And the question for Carmine Corp becomes, who is doing the shot calling on this roster? Kana, the Korean guy, Yike, the guy who definitely wasn't doing the shot calling on G2, Vladdy, the new guy, Callista, a pure rookie, or Targamas, the guy who doesn't talk. There's a real question there about how they coordinate, because that was the main problem with Carmine Corp. And even though they looked better with this roster, it's a lot of young or foreign players.
By the way, Monty, I'll always mention this whenever possible. It's my favorite piece of trivia in Western League of Legends. One of the weirdest details of all time is that Yike is only 1 year younger than Caps. Because he just came in quite late, if people don't know. He is actually like 24 years old. It's just he's inexperienced, isn't he? But yeah, it's wild, isn't it? You think that's not in your brain, you even look at he looks like he's 19-year-old, doesn't he? It's wild, isn't it?
So yeah, I think Carmine Corp will obviously be better. I mean, anything would be better.
I'm going to rank them though. What would you say on this one? If we're putting we're assuming G2 and Fnatic are the top two, right? Where would they be for you on this list? Because I'm scared about this roster, actually. I don't think most of the players are bad. The Targamas one scares the fuck out of me. I'm amazed they kept the same coach as well, by the way. That's an interesting angle. Like, if I look at Carmine Corp here, I'm thinking more like 5th or 6th or something.
4th or 5th, I think.
You're
for
putting
me.
4th? Okay.
So the problem is you have to actually rank somebody higher.
I'm going to put my top 3 is going to be G2, Fnatic, Movistar, right? So then after that, is there a team I'm putting above them? I think I would probably take BDS to be better than them, mate.
I think BDS's roster is interesting. I don't know enough about Paris as a player from the support role, but they kept, Ice I thought was really like low-key very good last split.
They got irrelevant over Adam. That's an upgrade, by the way. Here's the most underrated angle of the whole team, Monty. Everyone looks at the 113 guy and they go, I remember that guy in Astralis. He was the Carmine Corp jungler when Striker worked in Carmine Corp when they had the LFL team and when they had Reckless. And I can tell you, Striker thinks highly of this 113 player and has like a read on him. So I actually think that's even like an underrated move. I kind of like that pickup in some ways.
It's also that BDS has been very successful at being more than the sum of their parts because of the coaching. So I mean, I
don't the Paris player, but I think everyone else looks solid on this team. This could be a good.
I just trust BDS at this point in time. Yes. I don't trust them to win the league, but I do trust them to like put together a solid regular season and get a high playoff seed.
And I'm just thinking of this, Monty. Think how well coached they were around objectives and team fights. That was with stupid Adam doing all that like non-stop pushing. Bro, the irrelevant guy is a coach's dream top laner. This team could just be a really good squad. Like, as in, like, again, more than the sum of the part, not just the name value, just an actual squad that plays together. I think the irrelevant guy, by the way, is like the sleeper pickup of the season. I thought he was going to be in like a Fnatic or something, mate. I thought all the teams would go crazy, but BDS, it seems like, got him just nailed down super early on. And he, like, the rumors were already during Worlds that this guy was going. So I think they've killed it by getting him. I think he's mega.
Yeah, and Koi's coming back, and we saw a lot of the issues with Koi when they played internationally, but Fresskowy was terrible. Jojo Pian
is the obvious weak point.
Yeah, Jojo Pian is, even in a diminished state, going to be a massive upgrade. Is Mirwin the guy in top lane?
I don't even think Jojo was ever actually bad in Cloud9. For me, he just needed someone. Remember, bro, he had inspired before. He needed someone to sort of be the brains and the shot caller. Isn't that exactly what the doctor ordered with LTA? First of all, if you're LTA, you just upgraded from fucking Fresskowy to fucking Jojo. And if you're Jojo, you just got like another inspired, like a guy who literally not only has an idea of what he wants to do, you must do what he wants, Monty. That's even better. Just do what he says. Just do what this guy says.
The best games for Mad Lions last year was when they were just playing around Elyoya in the early game. It's like he's playing Xin Zhao, he's going in, no one else do anything unless Elyoya is there. Is it a very binary play style? Sure. Did it work because Elyoya is super fucking good? Yes. And it's clear that he was calling the shots. It's clear that they had the discipline to say, if Elyoya's not here, we're not doing anything. Elyoya is the tip of the spear. Everybody is going in when Elyoya goes in. And those early games where he managed to get those leads were the best games, I think, for Mad Lions. And so that makes me excited to see what happens with Jojo Pian. Because if Jojo Pian, as you point out, can follow, that's the most important thing. Will they be internationally competitive? Probably not. Like, Mirwin's funny shit was able to upset G2, but I don't think it's going to be good internationally. But I still think they're probably a top 3 or 4 team within this league. There's going to be a lot of teams that, like, frankly, I just don't know enough because of these players are coming from the ERL, like Vitality. I'm going to
disagree on that one, mate. That's one. Listen, it'll shock people because people are morons. I actually think the MDK team is like the sleeper, mate. Because I look at that roster, I thought Fresskowy was clearly the worst player on that roster. Like, remember, he also played mid lane, for fuck's sake, and he's not even Spanish. So it was like, why is this guy here? It's like that shit meme, you know, with the fucking polar bears in like Arlington, Texas. Like, what is polar bear doing here? That was like Fresskowy in that team. It's like, why is he here, mate? But then if you take him out, and you remember what they did have last year, the Merwin guy is this like weird coin flippy top laner, but who plays weird things in the draft that gives you angles. I think Elyoya is just still good. He's just clearly a very demanding player, and as you say, he demanded to play to his style. And then you look at their bot lane, actually, by the end of the year, it depends on which splits, each of them had times they were very good players. Like, you know what, the super guy, it might sound mad, but I actually sort of see now why he was so arrogant.
He's good at Worlds.
I thought actually when the team would play badly, he sometimes played well. And Alvaro, if you remember when they first came in the league, looked amazing out the gate, mate. He looked really good at the beginning, really good at the end of the LEC circuit. So I think actually on paper, the roster looks good. Remember, they got the same coach who was the coach with a bunch of them in the RLs. I think if you bring in Jojo and he actually listens and he plays mechanically like how I think he can, I think this team could be right there with like the Fnatic challenging G2. Like this could be like the second or third team for me. Also, shout out to the fact that Caps is a week older than Fresskowy. That's another good one. Exactly. That's why it's so important. These people are bringing like 24-year-old never were players and going, is this up and coming young talent is entering the LEC to be the next? He's not only not the next Caps, he never was Caps, you moron. Player. I can't. That guy sold his soul, bro, in that very first playoff run they had. He was having like the one random game where he would suddenly be good on like Ari or some shit, like out of nowhere, exactly the right time. Like, I think that is one of the craziest finals runs I've ever seen, that team. It's so stupid. That team had no business being in the finals. But this year, they actually look legit to me. I think it's funny because all the fans hate me, but I actually think I'm going to enjoy this team this year. It looks like one of the ones I'm into, mate.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to comment on some of the more ERL teams like Heretics or Vitality.
Is the obvious one you can't know because you just have to know that all those players when I don't know any of them. All this
Vitality too. Giant X could be interesting. Jackie's is actually, I think, showed some flashes of promise. Noah and Jun being on this roster, I think, gives them a solid bot lane. When it comes to SK, I think they clearly downgraded. I'm not too excited about their performance. Rogue is obviously the really funny one because they're bringing back Malrong with Adam and Execute. And as far as psycho players, Malrong Execute has to be one of the most psycho jungle support player like pairings I have ever seen. So they're really just banking on crazy here. And it could be, I'm looking forward to seeing their games because they will be funny to any degree. Why would they bring Malron back after, by all accounts, a mediocre season in Brazil with his weird jungle play style, especially when you have Adam on this roster? And then why would you bring in Execute, a player who looked downright bad in LCK on a bottom LCK team? Who knows? But he's here, and it will be funny.
I'm not a fan of this squad. Like, this squad to me does just look like mid-table, if not potentially even bad. Because the worst thing about this squad is this, Monty. The names aren't bad. Like, the resumes are okay. But it's like you said, there's so many ways I could see this being terrible. I mean, by the way, even the two big carries are obviously Larson and Patrick. They don't seem at all like the kind of players that were going to fuck with Adam and Malrang, mate. You know what I mean? Like, I know they've already played Larson and Malrang. I thought that was a joke. Like, one of the weird things about Malrang is, I actually think, Monty, if I was a coach, Malrang is the player I would use to make big ego laners shut the fuck up ruining the jungler's game. Because he would do shit, Monty, that I think is beyond abusive. Where sadly, you won't know this reference because it's too niche, but in Counter-Strike, right, in the team that guy James played in, Virtus Pro, and it was called a Vanguard before, he used to have a player, Monty, from Uzbekistan called Sanji. And what he used to do with this guy, it was like almost like on the level of like slavery, bro.
I remember Sanji,
because James was the AWPer, he would make the Sanji guy not even have an AK. He would just use like MP9 all the game and farm money to give James the AWP. And it's like his job was just to sacrifice his whole guy. If people don't know,
it was a mule.
I have seen Malrang do what is normal pathing and just break the pathing when it makes no sense as a jungler. You're going to completely ruin the game just to go and do a gank. That's doesn't
why
work.
I love him.
But that's like some small cute shit, mate. It's like you're demanding the jungler comes 24/7. Then when he comes and it doesn't work, you go, okay, now jungler, go back to your pathing. It's like, it's over for me now, mate. I'm so far behind. And also, not only did he do it for pathing, his items were mental, bro. He would do that thing where he's about to complete the jungle item and he would get the ruby crystal, you know what I mean, for like the team fight. And it's like, even though
this is why I love him.
I like it, that is going to be so bad. Combine that with Adam, this is going to be terrible, bro. What are we doing?
That's why it's funny. It's super funny. I mean, I love Malrong because he would just go into top lane and sit there in the closest brush to the turret, and he would just, Odoamne would be standing there, and then there would just be a slow push going towards Odoamne, and he would sit there for like a minute and a half while the slow push. It's like, surprise, Malrong's in the bush. And they get the kill, but the top laner's like, why the fuck was that guy in there for like a minute and a half? Yeah, that's the funny part. That's the great part about Malrong. Look, I have a soft spot for Malrong, not because I think he's good, but because I do love watching him play. And this roster is super funny.
I've always said he's one of those players, Monty, where I say it as a backhanded compliment, and it is a compliment. I think he's one of those players who should just play in the LPL, mate. You're just made for that league. You know what I mean? If you're like Malrang, Summit, mate, just go to the LPL already. That league was made for you to do your bullshit, you know. The other leagues are trying to play real league with metas and, you know, fucking established play. If you want to just be a guy who just shit with your hands, go to that league, mate.
Look, but if you're going to be a bad team, at least be an entertaining bad team like this.
That's true.
I mean, when Rogue was bad last year, they were miserable to watch. Now they're fun to watch.
Yes. No, by the way, remember, obviously, I was watching the games because I'm a Larson fan, but those were some bad games, mate. Like, that wasn't even interesting. You didn't even get the sweat of, like, they're in the game. They'll just be behind and gradually just bleed out and lose the game. It was shit. Yeah.
So Giant X is probably going to be, you know, they have a chance to crack top 4, I think, with the roster that they've got. Everybody else, though, I won't opine on just because I don't know enough about some of these rising players. Obviously, if I'm not going to watch Korean tier 2, I'm definitely not going to watch European tier 2 or NA tier 2. So let's switch over to LTA North. As we know, FlyQuest running it back this year, Team Liquid running it back this year. These were clearly the top 2 teams in the league.
Link me the thing with all the rosters. Link me the thing with the roster page.
Sure.
Some of them aren't listed for like Dignitas.
Oh yeah, Dignitas. Dignitas is supposed to be, just so you know, they haven't confirmed their roster yet, but it is Isles at support, Shaden at jungler, who was the former EG backup jungler, and then
when they have that cheap roster,
yeah, and then the FlyQuest tier 2 roster jungler after that, Tomo at AD carry, Kane, who's a Korean mid laner who is playing in LATAM for Movistar R7 and was formerly on the Freaks Challenger roster. I don't know anything about him. And Surti, who's the hyped up top laner.
Here's the question for you. The question is this, Monty. Let's just start like we did with the other ones. The real question, and I think this is a fun one because it's a pick 'em for me, is who actually is the best team? Because obviously FlyQuest and Team Liquid kept the same rosters. So the question is, who is better out of those 2 teams?
I think it's FlyQuest because you saw some of the flaws. I think the pound for pound strength of Team Liquid, wasn't good enough. APA was very fortunate to be in good metas for APA. And all it takes is one, I think, non-APA meta where we don't have Aurelion Sol, Talia, Ziggs, for him to be able to compete with a lot of the other mid laners like Quid and Quad that are currently in LTA. Yun did get significantly better, and so did Core JJ return to form. So those are I think a lot of it's going to be like, how hard can Yun carry this team? And we have people like Masu who are very good players who are here as well. So FlyQuest, it feels like roll for roll, pound for pound, they're just better outside of maybe top lane. And support. But Bucio also grew a lot. If you guys missed it, we did an interview with Papa Smithy on FlyQuest roster construction where he gives a lot of insight into that on our previous episode.
Like, my problem always with Team Liquid was, look, they did have good macro and they did have a good team structure and they played the draft out well and clearly people knew what they were doing in the game or what the wing could do. But I always thought the biggest problem they always had, Monty, was you just look at their mid and AD, 2 of the main carry roles in League of Legends. And remember, Impact's the other one. He's never going to be the shy. He's Impact. And you just look, and again, I'll do the same thing I did with T1, Monty. Okay, you're going into a series at MSI/Worlds. You're playing against, at mid lane and ADC, the following list. Knight, Scout, Chovy. At ADC, you've got Ruler, Viper, fucking Jackie Love, whatever, right? You want fucking APA and Yon in that scenario. Like, God bless if you do, but I don't. Like, that's a scenario where I'm going to be mismatched. Whereas here's the thing: FlyQuest as a team has way more like aspects where they're a bit jankier, and but the actual carry potential is mega in this squad. You think of, like, first of all, I said this before Worlds. I think Inspired needs to actually be given Yankos status, mate. This guy isn't just a really good Western jungler. Yes. He can actually compete with the best Asian ones. Yes. You can even tell they know it. They sort of give him that respect.
Inspired.
Master was He's unbelievably good hands. Quad actually just a sleeper, fucking good player. Like, these are just good. These are players I think can compete internationally, mate.
Inspired was the best Western player in 2024.
It's fair, yeah.
I don't even think that's remotely a controversial statement. The problem with APA is, like, a lot of his wins came last year on Ziggs, Corki, Tristana, Talia, and Aurelion Sol. Sure, he played Samari. People like his Nico, but I am very concerned about when we get into a control mage meta with APA, whether he has the depth in order to pull that stuff off. And I think APA is massively overrated as a player. I think that there are NA stans that really like to pretend that APA is a better player overall than he is, as opposed to a specialist player, which he absolutely is great a lot of the time. But I think that
he has... Give you the analogy, Monty. To me, he's like an American Power of Evil. They're not bad players. They're good players, but you have to play to their style, to their strengths. So there's not. The difference is the other players can play the off meta and stuff. This guy needs to tailor the team to him.
But I liked Power of Evil because he was a quintessential control mage player, right? Sure. So I feel like it's easier to build around him, and it's easier to to build strategies around him, whereas APA is a little bit more weird. And I think APA's career has been blessed by good APA metas. And my question is, what happens when he has to play it entirely outside of his wheelhouse?
Put it this way, I can't reveal how, but let's just say I heard from a little bird that all that stuff about Cloud9 and Jojo Pion actually didn't affect Jojo Pion's offers. It wasn't that like all the NA teams blacklisted him or whatever. Apparently he had mega offers, mate, like most of the teams I believe offered him. I just think of the what could have been. Imagine you keep the same Team Liquid like me, you just upgrade APA for Jojo. Mate, that is cooking with gas. That would be
Jojo
amazing,
should be on this.
I think that would be dope, don't you? That'd be incredible, mate.
Yes. Yeah. Clearly the upside to Jojo is a lot greater. Like APA, again, not to discount his growth because we've seen it. He's just not good enough. That's the problem. Fine. He's just not good enough. And now that we're dealing with Quad and the FlyQuest roster, it feels like it's going to be really difficult in spite of the fact that APA is a core part of Team Liquid, and it feels like the coaching staff really want to double down on the macro game. I said this last year. Team Liquid, I said last year, has world-class macro. They're one of the best macro teams in the world, and they're coming from NA. That's very hard to do. And it feels like they want to continue to push that because those are the pieces that they have. However, I do feel that Spawn is too stubborn in holding on to APA and the players that he brought from the Team Liquid Academy system with him, and that we have seen the ceiling at this point in time of APA. I just don't think he is going to get better, and they will always, particularly at the international level, be handicapped by the mid lane performance. And Jojo would have been a great player for this roster. So that's my issue with it, is that as good as they are, and as much as their macro can absolutely clean up NA, FlyQuest is too good at the moment. And so it's not like they're going to be winning massive macro games. Also, there have been changes. Do you really think we're going to see as many lane swaps this year? No, obviously not, with the changes that have been made to the game. That was one of Team Liquid's greatest strengths. So without that, are they a good team? Probably a lot worse than FlyQuest.
I'll give you another angle as well. I think actually what Inspired is doing at Jungle now in that region reminds me of when CoreJJ first went to NA. And it was like, bro, there was like a gap of this and him, the next support player. Because the difference is CoreJJ brings all these extra things and then the next support player is just a support player. The other player, bro, if you think about the fucking jungle pool in LTA, Inspired just runs this fucking league, mate. It's basically on it. That's why once he got Quad, like it's just on his back, mate. If he wants to win the league, he can win this. He could win like 4 or 5 of these fucking championships and be the MVP.
Especially when Masu and Busio improved dramatically, so he didn't have to fix the fuck ups in the bot lane, or they weren't. He wasn't having to like path down there or do weird things to save them. And Whippo, for all his faults, does have a weird champion pool that can occasionally just win you games. I'm not a huge fan of Whippo's playstyle, but I do admit that he is that wild card that can be effective at times, right?
He is also, I will say, the guy, though, where it's like, if I'm the opposing coach, Monty, I'm just leaving open 1 million, like, Renekton bait angles in the draft. Like, please, Whippo. And he will reliably go into that fucking... He can't stay away from it, mate. He can't stay away.
C9 is another interesting one. Clearly a downgrade. They're bringing in Loki.
Obviously, you could get the meme there, couldn't you? You must be pretty desperate to be coming and asking me for help for mid lane. A guy called Loki.
Hanwha challengers. It doesn't feel like the Sven Vulcan bot pairing really fixed their shot calling issues. I do think Sven was the best part of a bad Dignitas team in summer. And he deserves to be on a better roster. And he is very vocal. So, but is he going to be the one to pick up the slack? I don't know, especially with a guy who's played top lane in America for one split, and probably his English isn't too good, and Loki, a guy who I have to assume his English isn't too good either. Maybe it is. So, I don't know. Cloud9 feels...
Whose idea?
Mid.
Here's what I don't get, Monty. They didn't address any of the problems we had last year. We always said, once you got rid of Fudge, our main complaint about the roster wasn't even players. It was that you don't have shot calling. You don't have like the macro component. You've got less of it now. You've got 2 Koreans surrounding Blabber. That is a fucking int sandwich and a half. Vulcan was never like the shot calling support anyway. Sven is vocal in reviews, but I've heard in the game, as you can imagine, he just shuts the fuck up and plays the game. Like, I don't know where's the leadership in this squad? And also, by the way, Sven Vulcan is an actual bot lane from like 4 years ago. Like, I'm not hating on any player, but what is this roster? What is this roster?
They also had to break up that bot lane, not because of bad performance, but because they didn't like each other. So you already have the drama angle built in there too. So I think there are a lot of issues. look, man, there's a bunch of other funny kind of rosters. The guest roster of Disguise bringing back Abadage with former teammate He.
By the way, I will say, I just did recently in the last few weeks a reflections interview with He, and I'm not even joking, Monty. I actually might do another one of the videos. I did one in Counter-Strike. I think I did one in League maybe, but I'm going to do another one. I do these videos every now and then where I actually pick players that I actually think I did have the wrong read on. Because you know what? Even though he would even agree with us, Monty, he was never like a laning mid laner. He was never the guy who's going to get like hands kills. But if you ever go back and look, I thought before, I even told him this, I thought he was doing like your looper to fucking matter, and essentially Afro Move just tells you what to do. Actually, I don't think that's what it is. If you look at his career now, the fact that he himself rose up to support was very good. I think he actually is just a player who understands the map, mate. He just has like a macro kind of mind. And I have to say, I actually sort of feel, I'm not going to say I'm going to apologize. I just said he wasn't that good. But I think I actually misread this guy a little bit. I think he had an extra intangible quality I didn't realize.
That's why his best runs were on the Aurelion Sol pre-rework, right?
Oh,
because he did have the stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Makes sense. Yeah. But he actually clearly does have some extra quality. I think he's a good player, mate. I do. I think he's a legit player.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting. Like XU didn't really get the shot that he deserved. Castle was actually pretty good on Immortals. The other provisional guest team. What's the difference between guest and provisional guest? Still waiting on that answer from 100 Thieves or Riot. They're bringing back Snipe.
You just want you in the league, but you don't have to pay out some shit. I mean, don't get the revenue or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. They bought you out, but they need you because they look bad if you're not there. 100 Thieves.
That's it. By the way, that's even the weirdest thing, Monty. Essentially, what you did is you took someone who was renting an apartment in your house, and you said, "Look, here's some money. Fuck off." Oh, hello. Would you like to stay as a guest, though? I've got a room available. Like, what are you doing? Like, what is this?
They're like,
it's such bad messaging.
I know you want to leave, but you were such a good cook that can you just stay for a few months and cook me a few meals? That's what it feels like. So look, I always hated this 100 Thieves roster. I thought they were incredibly fraudulent, even when they performed well in spring. They got dusted in playoffs. They're very inconsistent. They haven't, like, Sniper has been lane dominant, but his teleport usage has been extremely bad. He doesn't know how to play the map as a professional top laner. Ayla is just fucking trash. So
it's good though. That's not a bad pick. I don't mind that one.
Sure.
Only one player, but yeah.
I mean, the question though is, even with this bad 100 Thieves team, who is going to beat them potentially? And we have Lion Gaming, the LATAM team, rocking up with Adi, who was not good at Worlds, Henna, Licorice, right? That doesn't sound particularly encouraging. Shopify Rebellion has taken Fudge off Cloud9's hand. We've got the devastating mid-jungle 1-2 punch of Contracts and Palafox back. B-Boy is actually good, to be fair. And Cios, the Brazilian support legend, who has been good when I've seen him and does have a good reputation. But the top, like the jungle top on this team, like who is the carry? I mean, the answer is B-Boy is the carry of this team, but it feels like they have very few angles to win.
By the way, I'll give you a little bit of info as well, which is in Counter-Strike, obviously, like 8 years ago, we had Brazilians become extremely good. They became the best team in the world and won the major. Unfortunately, one of the like general rules as well that we've also learned about team building is nowadays we don't do that thing anymore where we're like, if you don't know, like the best Brazilian player was a guy called Kei Serato the last few years. We used to say, you should just leave the Brazilian region, go and join like FaZe. We no longer say that because unfortunately in Counter-Strike at least, when one Brazilian goes to like another squad, it doesn't seem to work very well. They actually do seem very much about like culture, fate, and, you know, fucking people have the same attitudes. So I'm actually very interested to see what's going to happen with these like lone Brazilian players that are playing off in like a NA lineup essentially. I thought it's quite interesting.
I mean, they never got the shot, right? So I'm excited to see that. I'm clearly excited to see that. And if there will be growth with the LTA South team based off of the cross-regional competition.
Let's see.
If I had to rank these teams, I would say my ranking is FlyQuest, TL,
B9.
I guess it has to be
just from the hands, because like put it this way, here's the obvious angle for C9. Look, if the Thanatos guy really does just become unleashed, they have the hands to have fucking some good players. I just don't know if they can be a champion, you know. But yeah, you could take them third. Who are we doing fourth is the question. That's a fucking Sophie's choice and a half. What are you taking fourth? Who is it?
Maybe Dignitas, honestly, as crazy as it sounds.
It feels like you're just hating 100 Thieves too hard there, mate. Listen, they're not good. I'll take them over Dignitas. Yeah, I'll give 100 Thieves fourth. Come on.
100 Thieves, Dignitas, Shopify, Disguised, Lion.
You know what I love about the Shopify roster, Monty? It is like Reddit makes a roster, because these are all the players they would tell you were amazing. Like, oh, fortune, contracts, and power. Enjoy them all in one roster, motherfucker, because this team ain't fucking go to the finals. Enjoy that roster.
I just missed it, because Shopify at least used to be fun to watch. Like, I loved the Insanity rosters. They were just, like, hilarious. It was the rogue of
Speaking of which, by the way, where is he? Am I missing something? Everyone tells me about getting NA talent, Monty. This guy had real talent. Yes, he was a very idiosyncratic player, but he had something. He had like a little bit of an it factor. Where is he? How's he not in the league? What are we doing? What is this?
He's on Luminosity Gaming now.
Jesus. So he's in Brazil. He's in like fucking...
Nope. They're in the Americas. I think it's tier 2 Americas.
Oh, right. I don't know what he did wrong then. I thought this guy, he looked legit to me, mate. I enjoyed watching him
Tactical play. And Zazel. It's all the players from Shopify.
Fucking hell. That's how bad his career is. He's playing with Tactical now.
It's Fake God, Tomio, Insanity, Tactical, and Zazel.
That's the most fraud lineup of all time. What the fuck is that? Whatever GM made that, it's like the opening scene of Indiana Jones. They're just like taking a real roster and trying to... Is this a real one? No, it's fake. It's fake.
Also, what happened to Boogie? Because Boogie was actually pretty good in the jungle. I feel like he didn't get a fair shot.
Fine.
A lot of this was most of the players that were in Shopify Rebellion previously, I guess, are now on Luminosity. Otherwise, I mean, we could rank the other... I guess we didn't officially rank the other teams, the other regions. I still think G2 is going to be good, man. I can never bet against them. G2, Fnatic...
I mean, let's be real. When you have caps, you have to give at least like pencil in it. They could be the champion. He is the chosen one. He is some Anakin Skywalker shit. And it's all true.
For me, it's G2, Fnatic, BDS, Movie Star Koi, Carmine Corp, Giant X, SK Rogue, Vitality Heritage.
Oh, I forgot one detail. There is one other detail. Even though I don't actually think the Giant X roster looks that crazy, the one angle I am hyped for is when I did my interview last year with Giotto, who's gotten the coaching gig, he actually said, and this is dope, mate, he actually said the whole reason he has to come back and coach LEC is because he needs to win the LEC so that his son can actually see him win the championship, because he just had a son, if people don't know. That's a fucking ball of motivation reason, mate. That already, if it was a movie, I'm in. I'm in for the
ride. Gilda's a good coach too. Gilda's a good coach too.
Well, if people don't know, if you ever watch my interview with him, it's actually infuriating, because there's two factors. One, twice, Monty, he could have been in Fnatic with some of their super teams and like caps and shit like that. But he kept saying no because he kept doing that thing where he didn't want to gamble in the offseason and, like, you know, not get it in the musical chairs. And then secondly, I actually think in a weird way, he's one of those people, Monty, who intentionally makes life hard for himself as a challenge, if you know what I mean. Like, in a weird way, I think he didn't want to have like a Fnatic roster. I think he wanted to have, like, you know, an Origin or... I mean, he obviously didn't do it with the TL one, but I think he wants the roster where, like, it's his system that wins out. It's not just that you're the best players anyway. So I kind of fuck with that in a way.
I mean, he was a great development coach. That's the whole thing about him, is that he always did better where he was making the most out of potentially not so competitive a roster. In LCK, I will rank as follows: Hanwha, Genji. Ooh, do I go T1? T1. D+, KT, Nongshim, DRX, Brion, Freaks. Okay, what'd you say?
There was only two left at the end. No one really cares about the ranking at the end, but it's just the top four we need, basically. At the end, you can do whatever you want with that one, mate. It's all
good. So there you go. And then we didn't do all of the LPL teams because there's too many, but I do think BLG is probably going to stay on top of that region. And I think anyone's legend.
Here's what I'll do. I'm going BLG 1, just after. It's obviously also there's such good players. 2, I don't give a fuck. We're going IG straight out the gate. IG, all the boys are back. It's fucking 2018 again, bitch.
I got to go AL too.
Nah. Then we're going, anyone's legend isn't even third, mate. Third, then we're going with JDG. They can have that spot there. Then I'm going... fourth. See, it's really
AL has to be here.
Why?
You believe in top?
What the fuck's Anwell's Legend going to do internationally? Some of those players have never played in that scenario. So
how dare you talk about world champion Flandre like that?
Like, maybe anyone's engine could be fourth or fifth, but I'm not putting him super high personally. Like, I look at their caddy roster, but you've gone too far the other way. You're like overhyping them at this point in time. Yeah, there you go. That's top 4 to 5.
I'm not a believer in top esports, even with the upgrade. So I will take BLG, AL,
look at the players,
JDG, IG top, Weibo.
By the way, Weibo actually is one of the sleepers to me. That one's one way just to how the roster comes together. I could see a world where Tarzan and Zhao, who could be the shit, bro, if they really get the shit. That could be awesome. Yeah, if you think about Tarzan and Scout play, that could be fucking amazing, mate. I like him, Breathe. I think they're both good players. The Hun guy, I've never been a massive fan of, but he's not bad.
He's fine. There you guys go. We did put our official rankings out there, so you can clip this and make fun of us because inevitably at least one of these teams will have a massive boom at some point during this year and incredibly underperform. That's just how it is. Oh, I forgot. Speaking of having a massive boom, I forgot to mention Prince retired, which is very sad.
That's so ridiculous, isn't it?
It's so depressing that we could have a player like Prince, who is still relatively young in his career. He's retiring and becoming a commentator in the LCK. I'm not saying
it's barely 2 years after he was that fucking rookie sensation, bro. It's only 2 years or something. What the fuck?
He was so good. He was so good on that Live Sandbox roster.
Remember, they were supposed to be there, not DRX at that Worlds. The one that DRX won, it was supposed to be Live Sandbox as the 4th seed.
Yep. And when you look at his career arc, okay, so he has this amazing high. Sure, it's an AD carry meta, but he takes the resources, takes the mantle, carries the fuck out of his team, is amazing. Comes to NA, dominates LCS for a number of weeks before falling off a cliff, going from 3rd place to 9th place in LCS with that FlyQuest team. And then he went to LPL and was fucking terrible. So not to say that he's good anymore, but it feels to me like this was more of a motivation issue and a traveling abroad issue. So I'm just surprised he didn't have it in him to try and like come back in Korea, because his upside was obviously enormous. And it is a bummer to see a player that had this strong of an early debut completely fizzle out.
No, by the way, he was a really promising player. I thought he looked dope when he was in the LCK. I agree with you. I thought that first split in the regular season, he looked like the best player in the league in the LCS. He was fucking carrying. And we all know at the end now that roster was a bit sketch and did fall apart. Oh, I forgot one detail. And there was one detail, believe it or not, obviously for obvious reasons, we didn't mention LTA South, but there's one detail I do need to mention just to fuck with people in LEC. Why the fuck is Targamas in LEC, but Trymbi is playing in LTA South? What are we doing right now? I don't care what you tell me negative about Trymbi. He automatically is better than Targamas. This is absolute insanity. What are we even doing here, mate? What are we doing here?
He's been an extremely good player for a long time. It is wild that, I mean, he could be in North America. You know what I mean? Why is he in Brazil?
It wasn't like he was the problem in Herex, for fuck's sake. What are we doing? Are we hitting on this guy? He should at least be in the league. Come on. Oh, yeah, and also I will point out as well, just for the memes, Monty, technically in LTA South on Loud Gaming, Winsome's there. He's back. He's back. By the way, the most inappropriately named player ever in the history of professional esports. But there you go. Because you don't indeed win some, lose some. You just lose some, don't you? That's all you do when you have that guy there.
Can't wait for Eminez's comeback tour.
Do you know the saddest thing of all, Monty, is what fans don't realise is I don't have any problem with Jack firing LS or even when he Summit left. But, bro, it's the fact that you did it after like 2 weeks. Can I at least have a split and a Breaking Point documentary? That would have been the greatest break. That would be better than the fucking Loco Doco team, Liquid One Monty. That would have been straight. Can you even imagine that team with like Fudge mid, LS doing all his shit, LS out there buying chains and stuff, fucking Summit just like, I don't. By the way, my favourite part would have been the Summit LS interactions, because you have a coach who wants to do the most off-meta shit ever with a top laner who's like, I only play these 2 champions, get the fuck out my face, bro. I love it, bro. I love how much that was never going to work ever.
LS's white Samoyed dog just running around the house that he brought over from Korea.
It's amazing. That documentary would have been the best shit of all time. Sadly, we were robbed of it. We were robbed.
Tragic times.
Also,
all right.
I'll just put this out there, by the way. If you are a pro player, I hope people have got the memo. If you join Cloud9, you better be fucking dotting your I's and crossing your T's. Because Jack he's fucking gunning for you, bro. If you're doing anything wrong, if you're doing any it's like being in Cloud9's like being in fucking East Germany, mate. There's spies everywhere. They know everything you're doing. They're time stamping when you're leaving the room. So if you're going to join Cloud9, you better be on your shit. Maybe that's why they're just joining random. Maybe that's why they're recruiting random Koreans now, Monty. People who will just turn up on time, sit in a chair for 14 hours, then just go to bed and do nothing else. With no arguing back, just play the game. Yes, sir. No, sir. Log it down and then we start all over again.
Not bringing their dogs.
Exactly.
All right.
Who the floor was that hard, Monty, in the 2020s in League? You get paid millions of dollars. All you have to do is ready. Don't bring your dog to work and turn up on time. Fuck. And they're all like, how could it be done, though? The numbers, Mason. It's impossible. You guys are such clowns. So bad.
All right. So let's take a quick...
There's one last thing we need to talk about.
All right.
It's weeks ago now, so you'll have forgotten this. But I published Peter Dunn's God tier tell-all on the way out of esports. Because remember, as he said in the interview, because he didn't have any plans to, he says he will never work in esports ever again. He has a family, and also he's very disillusioned with the industry, Monty. Like, he thinks all the orgs are scumbags and cynical, and they don't give you time, and they won't let you actually work. And also, the reason he did this comment, if people don't know, is a mixture of, it's actually great promotion for us, because it was thanks to that Sackdown episode that Perks did, where Perks gave his side on all the shit, obviously, right. But as usual, left out certain things or coloured them their own way. And he has his own, I won't say truth, I hate when people do that, but he has his own version of it, his own opinion on what happened. But also, if you don't know Peter Dunn, the number one thing Peter Dunn hates is when orgs give up on and scapegoat rookies and players that are quiet. So the reason he really did that is that was like some Punisher shit, where he decided on the way out of the industry to just fire all the bullets left in the gun, mate. He just decided, fuck everyone who fucked Kaiser and this player. Like, by the way, some of the shit he told in that interview was unbelievable, mate. Like, when he made this roster for this year, last year with all like the big names, he wasn't trying to ever make that roster, Monty. He never wanted to make a Jankos Perks Wonder roster. He was trying to make a rookie roster with, like, apparently he was going to get Merwin before he came to Mad Light. You know, he had all these players lined up, and it just turned out they went with this Perks super team. So I wonder what you thought about that, because if you don't know, the part that made everyone go mad is he basically did just confirm that Perks did like a bunch of out-of-pocket behaviour and sort of was a bit rude to people and scapegoat them. Right. What do you think of some of that stuff?
Not surprising, I would say. I do enjoy that you have the tells of people leaving the industry, because I think it's necessary, and he's right. A lot of these orgs are scumbags, and, you know, basically, especially during esports winter, there was a lot of charlatanism with the venture capital. And so a lot of people who may be good at lying about the future of esports got in control of teams, were able to raise a bunch of money, but they're not capable of actually running esports teams. Look, I may dislike how Fnatic is run, but at least they've been through the hard times and like managed to survive.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the owners that are in, you know, that are part of these teams now, especially the newer rosters, have no fucking idea how to actually run an esports team, especially for the long haul. They're not SK Gaming, for example, which has done a lot with a little over a large number of years and made very savvy moves. Now, you may be like, I don't like SK because they're not very good in the LEC. Well, if you looked at how much their rosters cost relative to their performance, you might think very differently of them. And the savviness of running that org for over 20 years at this point in time through dozens of different esports and the ups and downs of the industry deserves credit. And we would much rather have those people at this point in time. So a lot of these people are just clowns, basically.
Yes.
They were people who got here because they were driven by the hype to be here, sold that hype that was lies to other people to raise large amounts of money. And now that that money is, you know, it may not be gone. They may still have a giant cash reserve, but there's no new revenue coming through the door, and they have to figure out different ways to run teams. These people are not cut out for long-term esports operations. So, which is fine. They'll go away. They're tourists. They came here to hype up this industry, make as much money as possible, and they'll be off to the next fad. They'll go to AI or whatever the fuck is happening next, right? Crypto.
I did see the other day on Instagram, because I still follow him. I can't give up on him, Monty. I still follow a little Loco Doco when he's out in the world trying to be this crypto trader. If you don't know, he's killing it, guys. He posted a screenshot where for the month he was up like 200K in crypto or something mad. So fair play. By the way, I can imagine that's way more exciting than like, will this move in league work out? You know, like the fucking scale's a bit different in it. Like now we can actually be like a millionaire.
No, he's killing it. He's killing it.
Yeah, fair play.
So, but anyway, like a lot of these people just suck at running teams. So it's not surprising to hear about Peter Dunn's issues. And plus he was all wrapped up with the EG scammers and the bullshit that was Nicole LaPointe Jameson and her grift. So, you know, it's been a bad time for him.
Changing her name might still be one of my favorite. There's two details that I love. One is that one I told you where bizarrely, like the LFN law's too deep. It turns out Maui actually like was involved with her in some context in school when she was like
not
marking his
romantically, just knew each other.
And also then the fact that she actually just changed her name as a way of rebranding out of all the shit she did in EG. It's like, okay, fair enough. I might rename myself. I tell you what, since he's left, actually, the name Jacob Wolf's available. I might rename myself Jacob Wolf. So. There you go. It's available.
Maybe I should just become Travis Gafford.
There you go.
We can have two Travises.
What we should do is just do like the meme version. You should be like Gavis Trafford, and I'll be like, you know, Wake Up Jolf. And then we're just better than them. We're just better than them at what they do. You
know. Too funny. Yes. So go check out those videos. Is the obvious answer. Any teasing you want to do for those?
No, I think that one, I've already teased it enough. Essentially, Peter Dunn, here's the thing that annoyed me, Monty. You had all morons that were like, hey, I haven't heard this about other players. Did you miss the part where this is a one-off interview where the person is leaving, never ever coming back, and so he's finally free to actually say what they think outside of Riot, Team or Control. By the way, he doesn't even have to ever worry about playing with these players, working with these players. There's all, essentially what I'm making the point of is, you are almost never going to get an opportunity like that to have an interview like that. That's why if you notice, by the way, if you ever watch this interview, it's not even really an interview, Monty. I'm not really asking him questions. It's just me sitting there letting him tell his story, basically. So it's not even really like one of mine where I'm digging. I'm just sitting back and letting him tell me the next thing, and then, you know, spurring him a little bit if he gets stuck in a loop. But I would just say it's like a true tell-all. He really, like, some of the shit he tells is fucking amazing. Some really in-depth stuff.
It is sad, though, because Peter Dunn was actually one of those coaches that you would want for development, that had long-term vision, that was able to develop rookie players, even as we mentioned earlier from JoJo from other games, that was able to implement styles to what, like he did with Danny, to kind of bring Danny in step by step into becoming a carry for the team while minimizing pressure on him at first. I mean, really brilliant. So it sucks to lose team leadership like that because he was one of the best.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll do some viewer questions.
Right, we are going to do the final segment of the show, which is, of course, the iconic viewer questions. We still haven't actually figured out that thing we said on the past ones, that we're going to change the perks, but we are going to do that soon. We are. So for now,
need to rebuild the website first.
And this isn't a hint towards my Peter Dunn interview there. But yes, as usual, if you are someone who subscribes to our Discord, the Last Free Nation Discord, you can ask questions in the channel, and then Monty will pick the best ones, or all of them, depending on how much time.
Or all of them. Probably all of them today. We don't have that many. But in any case, yes, we need to redesign our website is really the hindrance. So, and the holidays kind of got in the way of that. So we will do that, and then we will come up with better shit for you guys. Also merchandise. We're making that now. What are your thoughts on Battlestar Galactica? I assume the remake.
Oh, it means like the one from like 10 years ago, whatever it was, like the 2000s one or whatever it was.
Yeah, the 2000s one.
Here's the sad thing, Monty. This is an example of where, like, at the time, I actually remember thinking it was good. I remember actually I quite enjoyed that reboot, especially because some of the main actors were pretty good. But I have to say, I went back quite recently and tried watching the first couple of episodes again, and it was way worse than I remember. So,
oh, really?
I can't tell if that's a fully tainted. Maybe I'd have gotten into it again if I'd have watched. I didn't watch the first couple, but like I remember, I actually thought they did a pretty good job playing with the central premise of because essentially initially it was like, are any of them Cylons? Then it became the whole thing of what does it mean to be human, which is obviously one of the most interesting questions you can ask. That part I thought they did a decent job with. And like I say, the main actors, not like the fucking that fucking hotshot woman, I can't remember her name, the flight.
Starbuck.
I'm talking about, like, you know, the fucking captain, the Admiral Adama or whatever, and that woman who was the president. They were pretty good actors. I thought they killed it. They were pretty good. So.
I think Gaius Baltar is one of the best characters in sci-fi ever. I think he's such an amazing concept.
He's like a character out of an anime. I was riding with that character the whole way, even though he is like a coward and a weird guy. He's also, there's something compelling about that character, isn't he?
Well, it's just the concept of, you don't know whether he's crazy or the Cylons are talking to him, whether he's going to betray them. He has political ambitions, right? I just think he's such a fucking interesting character, and he's so well written. I do think, like you say, I love the themes that are in Battlestar Galactica. I haven't seen it since it was originally released. I wonder how well it has aged, because one of the strengths of it at the time was it was very topical with modern, like, contemporary politics of the time. Like they did episodes like about the U.S. treatment of the Abu Ghraib prisoners in Iraq and stuff like that. So they were paralleling contemporary events very closely. So my question, not having watched it since that was released, is how well has it aged? Because they were very contemporaneous in their takes.
I'll say the word spoiler here, but if you remember how the series went, it had the problem a lot of those shows have, which is eventually you can't, because the initial premises were escaping on a ship away from Cylons. It can't just be that for like 10 seasons. So if you remember, they tried to reinvent it by even when they went to that planet, and they had like a sort of like the fucking, like they were ruled over by the Baltar guy or whatever. That was an interesting rediscovery, but I actually did think what they did at the end with the actual like prophecy of the site, I thought that was shit, mate. Like that, the ending was quite poor, sadly. I think what you're saying was better when they were playing with the angle of like, are we just seeing his delusions, or is he crazy? That was way more compelling than like, here's the actual story of what was going on. That wasn't as interesting, you know.
Yeah, they did ruin it by giving you too much information. It was better left kind of nebulous.
And also sadly, Monty, we're now actual adult men, so you know what? Now I can't go like, haha, and that blonde woman was straight fire, wasn't she? I don't really give a shit anymore, mate. Like, at the time, I would have been all in, but yeah, no, just a nice blonde-looking actress, okay.
Have either of you read any book about the ship, the Endurance, and Shackleton? If so, what's your thoughts? Yes, I have. I have read the book Endurance. I think Shackleton is fucking amazing, and I love Shackleton. I love naval stuff like that, and just the story of how they were able to keep everybody alive is amazing. And as a feat of navigation in an open boat, I actually watched a documentary where they recreated the lifeboat and then put like British, elite British naval officers in that boat and tried to have them do reenact the Shackleton voyage. Incredible. I love it. But you should, the book Endurance is fire. Great book. As we approach the 10-year anniversary of Thorin's famous YouPorn as a sponsor and Creamy Moses rant, how have you guys changed in the past decade as a man, a content creator, and of course, a porn enjoyer? Thank you, Architect.
That actually is one of the biggest changes that has happened. Is I used to be before like almost a libertarian who I just thought everyone, it's only not harming anyone doing anyone. I actually don't think that now. Like, for example, I personally don't think porn is good. Actually, I'm against it. I think it's a corrosive force both to the people who are participating and the people who watch it as well. So it's actually, that's an aspect of my life I have tried to change quite a lot.
Well, also 10 years ago, it was not as widespread as it is now. It's just so pervasive.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
At this point in time.
The difference was, back 10 years ago, they were porn actors who were in these films. Oh, by the way, sadly, people who are trafficked and have a bad life and amateur. The idea, that's one thing I hate about it, Monty. Essentially, one of the things that made me sort of the chickens come home to roost on that topic is what it's done to actual society. Like, it's actually become the case now that if your 18-year-old daughter has an internet connection, she just might decide to sell herself sexually on the internet. That's a horrifying thought.
OnlyFans, dude.
Yeah, that's not cool anymore. That's not like some 30-year-old person or something. That's someone who can make a mistake that can ruin their life forever before they've even got a chance to let their brain develop and them to even know what life is in as an adult. And that stuff like that isn't funny to me anymore. I would have just seen like, oh, Lord, get to see the tits. Like that's a young man's way of thinking, I'm afraid. So
it's also just, in my mind, incredibly cringe how people use social media or like Twitch streams to promote their OnlyFans.
Yeah.
It's gross.
Oh, by the way, I think the way they do it on Twitter, especially, is just so stupid. Where they'll just come into like a political thread and be like, "Yeah, we'll check out my tits store." Like, oh, what is this, mate? Like, it's just garbage, mate. This is like some bad carnival barker. Like, come over here, step up, rep up now. It's the big thing.
We didn't mention this, but we did. Our editor, Adanian, actually did like last week release a video of 10 years of highlights from Summoning Insight, so you can see how we've changed. It's pretty fun to watch, honestly, for me at least, to see how you and I have changed over the years.
Oh.
Question for Monty: did you see the most recent movie version of The Count of Monte Cristo? No, I will watch it though. The French one that just came out. I know. I mean, the problem with
I saw the trailer for that. It looked good, actually, Monty. Actually, looked like it could be good.
Look, the problem with The Count of Monte Cristo as a movie is that it's like a 1,000-page long book. So how could you possibly make a good movie?
Here's why I could trust it could be good, though. Because it's a French film, Monty. I actually think that means it's less likely to play in a really stupid Hollywood trope, so maybe it has a chance. You know what I mean?
I mean, the 2002 movie with Jim Caviezel and Guy Pearce and Henry Cavill when he was very young, actually. The first half of that movie is actually really good.
It's a good film.
The second half that is terrible. So they nailed it up until the point where he escapes the prison, and then it's just fucking tragic after that. Because the weird thing about Count of Monte Cristo adaptations is everybody wants to make the story about how the Count gets back with Mercedes, which is and like has a happy ending, which is totally not the point of the book whatsoever. So if you do that, it's instantly wrong. Finally, was financially stable enough to be able to afford supporting my favorite content creators. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for supporting us. My question is, since I see you all as people who try to sponsor the best products, what do you think about the huge Honey browser extension scandal going on, considering the huge amount of sponsorships it received? It sounds super scummy to me, but do you think it is as bad as it's being portrayed?
I've never heard of this, genuinely. What is this browser like?
So it was a browser extension that would basically search the web for you and apply discount codes automatically or tell you if there was a better deal on another site. But apparently they were skimming some of the affiliate money for themselves without anybody knowing.
Right.
And so it was kind of a scam to get people to install it. I did use it for a little bit and I did find it useful, but yeah, I don't think, look, it was a useful tool. Was it bad that they did what they did? Yes. But also nobody who they sponsored would have known that they were taking money. Like they were basically embezzling money.
Oh, by the way, that's one thing I am really sick and tired of, because we've had it once or twice, but it's going to happen because we have so many sponsors. This thing where people think, Monty, that if later a company completely unrelated to our sponsorship or their involvement in esports does something dodgy, like their product's not legit or they don't give you a refund, the idea we're them like corrupt pieces of shit like people who work with the Saudis, fuck right off, pal. The difference is those people knowingly, literally know that when they attend the event, over in the other room, someone's getting their head cut off. They're fully aware of all the bad parts. In fact, they are seeing when they take the money, I don't care about it.
I want to cover it up.
We had a sponsor last year. It was only one time that it turns out did have a scandal that was involved around them. And as soon as we actually did find that out, we immediately dropped them. So I'm sick and tired of people in an industry where, for example, I've always said this because I'm one of the only people who can say it, Monty. I have never told a lie in my professional career of 23 years working in this industry, but I'm treated as though I'm the piece of shit who has to prove I'm reliable. I am the most reliable person to ever work in this fucking field. I don't think even Richard's ever said that line, by the way. I don't know whether he would say he's lied or not, but I've never even heard him match me with that line. So the idea we should be treated with the ultimate suspicion. No, the other way around. We have tried to make sure every sponsor is legit as fuck. But I agree with you. You can never know on ones like that. Sometimes you just have a sponsorship and all seems fine. Yeah.
We have turned down sponsors. We do try and vet the sponsors that we have. Some of the sponsors are people that I have gone out to and cold contacted because I like their products and I want to represent them. Now, obviously, many of them don't respond. Some of them do. But an example of that was like Into the AM. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Was a company I was familiar with that I went out and got. Right. We didn't get Aura frames. That was brought to us. But Aura frames were products that I had bought multiple times years previously. So I was very familiar with the product. So it was fun. When we got that sponsorship. But we do test the products. Like I have used every single product that we have had at LFN, including ones that we haven't even started the campaigns yet, guys. They'll be coming in the next couple of weeks as the League of Legends season starts. So I do try. Okay. But we can't, when it comes to terrible business corruption, there's only so much we can do. And I don't think Honey as a product was a bad product. And I don't fault people for taking them. They couldn't have known. Hot take. Riot should allow players to declare their domestic region before they enter a tier 1 league, regardless of where they are from geographically. This way, up-and-coming players, particularly from Korea, can declare as NAEU domestic players, which will open up an influx of new talent to the LCS. I mean, Riot will never do that. Is it a good... I think it's a fine idea, but Riot will never do it. If they do well, they can return to Korea's imports, as Korean teams don't use import slots. I mean, you're right. But the problem is that they won't do it because Riot would literally rather watch LCS die than do that.
I mean, the ultimate company I've shown they'll always cut off their nose to spite their face. Yeah, absolutely.
This is kind of funny. Obviously, this is a joke, guys. Snacks to G2 and Reckless to T1, some of esports' most famous DEI hires. Is there a glaring omission in this comprehensive list? Or is there a dark horse pick you'd include? I mean, there are many DEI hires, guys. They just weren't players. The funny thing is that in esports, in sports, what happens is you just sign the best player that you can, right, in order to be competitive. But apparently that doesn't actually apply to anyone working at an org, right? Like nobody's ever said, wow, this Korean team certainly would be better with a more diverse background of players. No one's ever said that. They just win world championships because they're better, right?
Put it this way, even though all those worlds were won with Koreans, nobody saw BLG lose the finals and go, the problem was you didn't have any Koreans, mate. They were like,
it was the diversity.
Yeah, you could have won with all 5 Chinese. What are you talking about? Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I mean, yes, there have been many. You can probably think of some. We're not going to go there.
The reason why that topic always tilts me, because the reason why the snacks one is a good example, Monty, is because when he joined the roster, a lot of us said we didn't think it'd be very good, but they won 2 blasts, right? So here's where it gets tricky. If you win championships with all the best teams there, you must be good on some level. But here's the problem. Unfortunately, fans are really terrible at what are called counterfactuals, Monty. Imagining where you change one detail, what would have happened if this variable was different. What they will always ignore is this, Monty. If you had potentially the best player in the world in m0NESY, and your aim is to win the major, well, then it doesn't matter if you win 2 blasts. What if a different roster would have won the 2 blasts and the major? But in their brain, it has to be, unless Snacks completely failed, the fact they won the blasts means it was an excellent pickup. That's not at all the case. These moves are all on a spectrum, in my opinion. In fact, as I said, look, I turned out to be wrong because they won Worlds. But the reason why after 2023 Worlds, I said if I'm T1, I definitely upgrade. It's because you're not playing the same teams even, mate. You're not trying to just win a tournament. You're trying to be the best team ever. So that's the reason these moves are also annoying, because if they have any modicum of success, people act like you're the moron. Whereas I'd go the other way. Like in that T1 example, in my opinion, if you do it right after you win Worlds, you could have had the roster that could have had the golden road. You'd have all the leverage was on your side. So the problem with the snacks move is, why not just get a better in-game leader? You know what I mean? They could actually have won the major with a better in-game leader, mate. So I think that's just one of those ones where people just torture analysts with it, but whatever. It's a funny question, though. And by the way, before anyone tells you, you're making it up, no one ever said Reckless. There really are. I could literally show them. I have shown them on my stream, Monty. There are real tweets from people who are not trolling who say that Reckless must have done something like tell them stuff in the reviews at Worlds. That is real. Or even mad shit like him playing chess with Faker, like revealed Faker's stress or whatever. Spoiler, that's not how Koreans relieve stress. Something, Anjma. That's the end of that joke, Monty. I kept the camp for you there. I didn't go too far. Something.
What are 3 tropes you are sick of and 3 tropes that you want to see more of in storytelling? We don't do 3 of each, probably. For example, I love characters being broken and being at their wit's end, and I viciously hate the new trend of every deemed bad, evil character deserves a redemption arc.
Oh, by the way, he's nailed one thing about the modern day I find is actually pure cancer. The real reason, Monty, I don't want someone to remake Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, isn't actually even about the idea of making more films. I'm not one of those people, Monty, who thinks that you should be precious about the originals. If you want to make more stories, do it. My problem is this. They don't come along and go, I want to make Lord of the Rings because I love Tolkien. They go, I'm going to make Lord of the Rings and everything's going to be subversive. So you know that good character, Galadriel? Maybe she's not so good. Maybe she's actually quite dark and troubled. You know that evil guy, the ultimate evil, Sauron? Maybe he's not that quite evil, or maybe he's just misunderstood. And maybe if people
maybe has a troubled history.
I know, it's like, bro, just make it more obvious you were the loser in high school getting shoved in a fucking locker and this is just secret about how you should have been given a chance by the prom queen or whatever the fuck. Like, bro, this is just all your baggage. The writer, just the writer's badly disguised fetish again, isn't it? What is this?
The hate the new trend of every deemed bad evil character deserves a redemption arc is one thing that I really appreciated about the Penguin. Because at the end of the Penguin, I was like, oh God, are they going to try and redeem this character? And then it was like, no, he's just a piece of shit. He's just actually a monster. Spoilers, I guess. But it was a good scene where you think some bullshit writing's gonna come in, and then they just snuff it out immediately, and he is just a giant piece of shit. So I appreciated that. I do think though that that redemption arc of villains is really weak. Or my favorite thing that they do, Thorin, and this is one of the many examples of absolutely garbage tier writing in Harry Potter, is that they try. So Voldemort is just like objectively a monstrous piece of shit, right? He's just off there murdering people, has no motivations besides consolidating power and spreading terror to increase his level of control. But then they try and introduce this backstory where he had like a bad childhood. And I'm like, that's cool, but he's still a giant piece of shit that needs to die, right? So it feels so flat when you try and people substitute character development for revealing backstory. And by the way, George R. R. Martin is super guilty of this, where he's like, gimmick. Yeah, his whole gimmick is like, I know Jaime's a piece of shit, but what if you felt bad about what happened to Jaime previously?
Let's give him a chance to have a monologue, though, and then they always win you over with the monologue, don't they? Every time.
By the way, Jaime doesn't have character development in Game of Thrones. By the end, and sure, part of that was the show, but by the end, he still is just obsessed with his sister and is being a giant piece of shit. There is no character development to Jaime. They tease you with it, with like his hand being cut off and revealing his backstory. But that in storytelling, it tilts me to the maximum degree where in the substitute for character development in the timeline of the story is simply going back and saying like, but this person had a rough time in the past, as if it justifies them being a piece of shit now, right?
I'll give you one more. The most annoying aspect of woke intrusion into culture is when they take characters and they just pick whatever their chosen minority of the day is, and they make that character a fucking wizard in real life, Monty. Like, if they're like a lesbian black girl, they're going to be like the greatest computer hacker ever who can turn any machine into anything and fix any gun and hack a time portal and hack in the NSA data. But like, what even is this? Like, it's one thing to say I'm going to show positive role model. You've overegged the pudding, you idiot. You've gone too far on that. And again, it's so obviously very poorly fucking hidden your biases that you just want the world to believe that particular group are the best and the greatest. So I think it's just bad writing, personally. Just bad writing, mate.
Thorin has said a bunch of times that one of the biggest missed opportunities for Western teams was not picking up any of the Flash Wolves players back in the day. That's just true. With the import rules in mind, which team would have had the highest ceiling signing the Flash Wolves players and could have made a bigger dent internationally with those players? Here's some I thought of. 2015 CLG with Karsa / plus Maple. True. 2015 H2K with Karsa. 2016, 2017 TSM with Karsa / Sword Art. 2016 Origin with Karsa / Maple. I mean, Maple would have been an upgrade to basically any NA team besides TSM with Bjergsen at almost any point in time.
I do love the idea of just taking Karsa and Sword Art and putting them with like Jubluft and Bjergsen. I think that would be straight fire. Especially like you're saying, if we're going like 2016 when they're really good, that would be straight fire as a roster. Because by the way, that really is my move. If I could go back in a time machine and I'm going to do like some biff fucking with the Grey Sports Almanac, I'm not going to do something ridiculous, Monty, like go and find Caps when he's 12 and get him. I would just do something simple like that, just seems at the time like, a bit of a gamble move, but that move would be incredible. I think that move would be straight fire, mate. What a roster that would be.
Yeah. I mean, Sword Art and Maple and Karsa were all independently very good and could have slotted into NA teams. It is wild that nobody tried to take them.
For the ongoing to me that they took so many years to even get to the LPL, bro. Like, they took years and years to even go there. Like everyone just ignored these guys. They had to beat the Koreans a million times before everyone acknowledged them.
For the ongoing CS roster mania, what would be your dream moves to make the best overall scene? So best overall scene if you could ignore constraints like money and geopolitics. So how would you orchestrate some of these roster moves to make the best, most competitive scene?
is because right now
Russia.
the tough thing is no one who's Ukrainian will play with anyone Russian in theory, right? Because of the obvious reasons why. So the issue you have is you have an amazing amount of Russian talent, but it's just you can't either sign a Ukrainian player to their org, so you can't have like simple play for them, for example, and you can't often go vice versa. You can't have like a player join Navi now. So that I know what he means on that one. Here's the problem with that one, Monty. What's the upside on me saying that one, though? Like, isn't that just going to hurt people's fit? Like, why am I just going to go, hey, why don't we put this Palestinian guy with an Israeli player and ignore politics? What's the upside of me even saying that hypothetically? So I'll skip that. What I'll say is just this. I would just do things like I want all the good players to be on the board. So, like, at the moment, Simple isn't signed to anyone. I would like Simple to join a team. Maybe he could join, like, FaZe Clan or something or some squad like that. I would just make all the top players join all the top teams, basically.
Since the LPL English broadcast is dead, Thorin said on Side Select he would rather have Medic casting than a co-streamer. Now the real question is, would you rather have Latigris cast or watch a co-stream?
You know what's funny, Monty? I actually think in some ways she was just completely fucked by the Riot broadcast. Like my analogy would be, she's like one of these... they're full of them in the NFL, Monty, so you're going to know the analogy. She's like one of these highly touted college running back read option quarterbacks who go to the NFL, they get drafted high, and the team that drafts them has no O-line. It's like, bro, what do we even, you know what I mean? Like, they do that over and over again in the NFL. And they expect this guy, because in college he dominated. It's like, well, go for it then. It's like, he's going to get destroyed by sacks all day long. So my problem with this is, I actually think at everything except casting, I actually enjoyed her, Monty. I actually thought, by the way, on the broadcast, when she was just like, maybe the interviews were a step too far, but when she was just doing general desks of, I actually did find her to be an authentic person, Monty. I believe she did care about League of Legends. I actually even thought her voice was quite good. She wasn't that annoying a personality for me. Her problem was, as a caster, people have seen it, she did have some clear flaws, and she obviously clearly could not handle the scrutiny of it as well, unfortunately. And then that thing with the double, that was just the broadcast thrown under the bus there. I think that is disgraceful to this day, that they not only let her do that, fucked her over, and then let her apologise. That's where someone on the broadcast would go, this was my bad. In fact, I told her she could do this, blame me, guys. So I actually think she's actually slightly maligned me, even though it's funny to remember all the silly shit casting and stuff and the blood pumping or whatever that fuck was, whatever.
Do you have any early hot takes for Pro LoL in 2025? Probably some that we had in this episode, but we also have a show called Hot Take Point Made that you can watch for hot takes.
I'll give you one free, straight out the gate. Tell you what, that whole thing of like, if Rookie's so good, why isn't he at Worlds? It's going to suck when he's in the semi-finals of this Worlds and Faker's watching at home. Yeah, that's right, bitch. That's a free hot take for you out the gate. Mark that one down in your calendar. I'll see you at the end of the year.
I've been enjoying the Netflix adaptation of 100 Years of Solitude, and I wanted to know if either of you think that great literature
Monty, I'm glad this guy brought this up, because he's going to say, can you like adapt great literature to a TV series or something, right?
To a different medium.
There you go. When I even saw this on Netflix, I actually did mentally think I wanted to message you, but I forgot to. That is how bad culture is now, Monty. Of all the books that someone
magical
could make
realism is hard
into a Netflix. Remember, Netflix is the one, Monty, where like in the series, now your granddad is just a black lesbian trans woman. You know what I mean? Like that is Netflix. So the idea of all the books you're going to take 100 Years of Solitude and make a Netflix show. How is that? I mean, it's impossible. This show could never be anything like the book. It doesn't even make sense.
So I've read a bunch of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I've read 100 Years of Solitude. I've read, Love in the Time of Cholera. I've read a bunch of his short stories.
I'm sure you love it, right?
I like magical realism, but I question how good it could possibly be in that format.
Put it this way, Monty, if I hear they're doing that, it better be like, and it's by like David Lynch or something. Like, it can't be some random shit. There's no way it's going to be good. Come on. So I haven't watched it, sadly. I wouldn't click that, I'm afraid.
The rest of the question is also shout out Thorin predicting the Zendaya casting in the Odyssey years ago. That was a head scratcher, man.
That is actually mental, isn't it? I said I know. There's another one, Monty. Hey, good news, guys. Because by the way, I've always thought, we're going to do Troy soon on 4Play. Why haven't they ever done an Odyssey film? That would be banging. Yeah, well, I didn't mean with fucking Zendaya in it, did I? Again, that's some Netflix Zoomer casting. Why are you doing that? I
am sad that I'm sure we'll get into this on 4Play, but they never made the Sean Bean Odysseus Odyssey movie, because that would have been a fucking banger.
Except, by the way, a spoiler, obviously we'll get into this on 4Play. Sean Bean is fucking unbelievable at that role. He is fabulously cast as fucking Odysseus. He would be incredible in that film, wouldn't he?
Also, I don't know how I feel about Matt Damon being Odysseus. Christopher Nolan, I'm excited that it's a Christopher Nolan movie, but the cast seems weird.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I'll give you a counter, which is one of the reasons why The Prestige is one of my favorite films. And I've always said that was the movie that convinced me, like, Christopher Nolan just is the shit, man. He's just going to run this industry for years. Is because actually at that point in time, Scarlett Johansson was sort of like a good but not amazing actress. I had met a lot of people when they saw her cast in that film. I thought, like, is she going to be any good? She was dope in that movie. She did a really good job, mate. So I actually think Christopher Nolan's actually pretty good at getting performances out of his actors. By the way, what about that guy from that like One Direction he had in like fucking Dunkirk, mate? Like, he's had a lot of actors that otherwise would be like a silly casting. He sort of made it work. So I fuck with him, mate.
I will say, at least with the Odyssey, that the Odyssey is episodic by nature. So one actor can only fuck up one scene, basically. They can't fuck up a bunch of scenes, except for Odysseus, obviously. But because he's going from place to place, I don't think Zendaya might be Circe or Calypso or something like that. But she can't fuck up the whole movie. She can't fuck up the whole movie. So the question, though, can great literature be successfully adapted into a different medium? Of course it can be. What kind of question?
Here's the problem. I once did a video very early on my side channel, my non-esports channel, about this topic, Monty, because there's a film that I think is the best example of this ever. If you ever watched the David Cronenberg Naked Lunch film, obviously Naked Lunch is unfilmable. So what he does is he essentially uses elements and themes from Naked Lunch and then the biography of the author, William Burroughs, and he mixes it together in what I think is a fabulous film. But it's not, like, you almost may as well not call that an adaptation. You've just done almost like, I don't know, like a pastiche biopic with thematic elements. It has its own magical realism and weird elements. So the key thing for me is this. I'm never looking for the adaptation to be like, perfect or one for one. I actually think that Watchmen film is a great example of why you don't want to do it. I think sometimes it falls flat in another medium. I want it to be where you can take any property that exists, just give me a brilliant creative mind and then let them go to work. Like if that person then does whatever they want with it, awesome, then I'm in. If it's a really good director and then they get that book or whatever, maybe they'll do something unique with it I haven't thought of. So that's more my take. I'm totally up for adaptation, but I just want you to be unique with it. Actually go ham with it. Don't think you have to be like faithful. You don't. It's a different medium. It won't work the same way.
Why was Samsung so much different as an org than the other chaebols, despite being by far the largest? They were always surprisingly more of a budget team, as they lost all 10 of their players in the Korean exodus, rebuilt with cheaper players, and sold their roster after winning Worlds, and before salaries in Korea exploded. Do you think it's because there was no one in Samsung that wanted to waste money to try to win? So this is a weird situation, but also you have to remember that, as I said in our previous episode, the Hanwha T1 pissing contest that is going on is between two billionaire children. Okay, not literal children, but children of billionaires who control these teams. And they just like League of Legends. So I think there was nobody in Samsung who had that level of absurd control over the team. But the weird thing about Samsung is when you talk about Hanwha winning Worlds as a marketing exercise does nothing because Hanwha doesn't sell things outside of Korea. Whereas Samsung, you would think that there would be a lot of value to Samsung being on an international stage as a marketing exercise. That has always confused me about Samsung. Samsung certainly could get better value than SK Telecom or Hanwha from owning an internationally successful LoL team. So I don't know is the answer. It always has been a weird question to me. But the answer as to why it's happening this way right now is it's not about the companies. It's about billionaires pissing away money because they want to win and feel special.
Also, Monty, what he's missing there is you have to know. Here's another thing. I think, again, by the way, it's 10 years later. The statute of limitations has passed. So I'm just going to say this now. Another thing is, technically, Samsung played their hands the most perfectly of any org to ever work in League of Legends. Because remember, they were only around for a year or like 2 or 3 years. They came along, got one of the best teams, then won Worlds and all the LC OGNs out the gate. Then they later made the World Finals with the other Samsung rosters. And then they exited and sold right when it got really expensive. If people don't know, I imagine the budgets of those rosters relative to what they accomplished is probably the greatest min-max ever in League of Legends. Because if you don't know, especially in 2014, I'm just going to say a random number, Monty. I would guess for real that those players made salaries like $30,000 a year or something mental. A year though. I'm talking like they but it's weird. Bjergsen probably had a contract like the whole team combined, right? So it was also way cheaper to have a player back then. When the Chinese came in, they were paying millions of contracts. So, they were paying way more.
In terms of Samsung, you have to remember that they were around in Brood War, very famously as a StarCraft roster. Then they kind of took a sideline for a little bit. Then they re-entered in League. But the way they did it was to basically buy the MVP org. And MVP is probably the single best org in history at developing talent. So they got really good value because MVP had been sitting on MVP white and blue and like kind of accidentally won a champions title in Korea when they were massive underdogs. So MVP Ozone just randomly won. And then they acquired this roster, this like already developed roster from the people who are in StarCraft 2 as well, some of the best talent development coaches and orgs ever. So they were smart. They were very smart. Happy New Year. What esports related activity are you looking forward to the most in the next year? Be it event, new podcast, or something else? I mean, MSI. Always love an MSI.
In League, it's always going to be MSI, isn't it? The format's just a shit.
Yeah. I am looking for new podcasts. Well, hopefully we're going to add some new podcasts and other games to LFN, which I'm looking forward to, or we're going to be porting some of our successful formats into other games. So that could be fun.
I will say in CS, I'm quite hyped about this move where apparently there's a double move. Rops is going from Phase to Vitality. So that means you're going to get Ziwu and Rops play together. The reason why that could be dope, by the way, is Rops is like a mega closer clutch player. I imagine those two together, you could win everything, mate. The chances are amazing for that. And then the person replacing Rops, supposedly, is going to be Elise, who I'm a massive fan of. So I think Elise under Carrigan could be fabulous too. And it'd be his chance, like Twists, to win all the championships and do all that jazz. By the way, I hope one day down the line, NAF does the same thing, goes to European teams. So there's some pretty spicy moves in CS, actually. That could be very interesting.
Are there any films or TV shows releasing in 2025 that you're excited about? I'm excited about Mickey 17, the new Bong Joon-ho movie with Robert Pattinson. I think that could be really interesting. We probably will do a Bong Joon-ho arc on Foreplay at some point in time.
I don't know what's coming out. I'm not really the sort of person who keeps up on stuff enough, to be fair.
Yeah, I don't really.
The only thing I'm waiting to tease, I'm just waiting to see that Nosferatu film. But
I saw it yesterday.
That's all I've got.
I saw it yesterday.
I don't particularly have any series I'm super hyped for or anything.
It was pretty good. I thought it's probably, in my opinion, I think Nosferatu is probably Egger's worst movie, but it's still good. I mean, the bar was set very high for him. Trying to see if there's Severance season 2. I'm excied about coming out.
Is the movie we talked about earlier, the Christopher Nolan thing, supposed to come out this year or next?
2026.
All right, okay.
It comes out 2026. So trying to see if there's anything else. There's a new season of Wolf Hall that could be good. Andor season 2. I'm excited about.
Nah, nothing for me. I'm not really the sort of person who tries to be on the cutting edge, mate. I just watch shit that I like from whatever era.
I just gotta wait for it to come out, and then I hear about it, so I don't really look ahead that much. Severance season 2, though, and Andor season 2, I am looking forward to. And I am looking forward to Mickey 17. So yeah, that's it. It's the last question. Got through them all. So that's it. We'll be back for more preview content next week. So we'll see you guys then.